Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Arvanauts. Welcome to a Tuesday stream. It is 12:30 p.m. Eastern, October 20th, 2020. It's 10/20/2020. There's a lot of 2020s in there. And there's been a lot of 2020 in our life. I think we can all agree. I hope everyone's doing well, and I hope everyone is staying safe and looking forward to what I hope is going to be an awesome session today of the incredible and amazing, as he finds the link, Erebor Adventures, which we've got going on today for you as we move into day 9 of Adventures in Middle-earth Erebor Adventures, the Silver Needle. Before we go any further, just a couple of reminders about ways to support the stream. If you haven't done so already, please follow the channel here. Please check out our YouTube with !ArvTube, our Discord with !ArvCord, Twitter is !ArvTweets, and our website for all of that is arvaneleron.com. On the financial side, if you haven't done so already, please consider jumping over to support us on our shop. As I cough, hold on a second. There we go. As we support the shop, which has merchandise for Adventures in Middle-earth and also for the Infinity and Beyond crew, which is currently playing, of course, Curse of Strahd, although not for very much longer. We're moving into our conclusion there. Exclamation point, Arv Treon is our Patreon, 22 patrons, $2.39 per month. That continues to slowly tick up as some people go on to a more annual plan, which is good for everybody. It helps me because I know that money is locked in. It helps the people involved because they save a little bit of money up front per month, which is cool. So anyone who can jump on board with the Patreon, it would be appreciated. You can get awesome custom sub badges. Sorry, not for the Patreon. You can get inspirations, I should say. You can also get copies of one of my band's albums. You can get a professional writing critique. You can get poems written about you, epic character backgrounds, and all that stuff. So there's a lot of stuff for you and for the channel as that moves up. So please consider supporting us on the Patreon. And as far as the custom sub badges and emotes and also inspirations, you can sub for that, and doing that also really supports the channel. So please consider jumping on board and doing that as well. Subbing and resubbing really makes a difference. Gifting subs really makes a difference. So thank you everyone who has done that to this point, and I am very grateful to everyone who's been able to support us there. On the publishing side, exclamation point Icarus for the Icarus graphic novel, which will be officially released by Athos Arts on November 10th of this year. Very excited about that. Just a few weeks away, and I am super excited to share that with the world in the retail market. Exclamation point library is Tales and Tomes from the Forbidden Library, my 5e adventure and sourcebook from Alligator Alley Entertainment, coming in print very soon. I've been saying that for months and months, but it is coming, I swear to God, very soon. So that is coming up, and it's available right now in digital form on DriveThruRPG, where it is a silver seller. And then we've got exclamation point Greyshade KS for details about my Greyshade Kickstarter, which is launching February 2nd of next year, and I am very excited to be able to turn to that and be able to share that with you when we move into the new year. Last but certainly not least, we have, very importantly, exclamation point BLM, Black Lives Matter. This continues to be something we will push on this channel. You can go and get resources, educational resources, information about political advocacy, police reform, and places where you can donate to support charities and other organizations that support Black Lives Matter, because it has never been more important. Let me also take a moment to congratulate FIACon, which was apparently an overwhelming, enormous success. This is an example of something that comes to mind when I thought about BLM, because Brandon O'Brien, of the Rising Tides, is a big supporter and was a former editor for them, poetry editor for them, and they did apparently an amazing job, so it's really cool, and I'm very glad that they did, and congratulations to FIACon, and let's get more stuff like that as we go forward. Exclamation point vote now. It is 2 weeks, ladies and gentlemen, 2 weeks to the U.S. election, and really the election has already started. Over 30 million people have already voted, which is great. The more votes that we get in now, the more early votes that we get in now, the less that any shenanigans can change them later. Please make a plan to vote. If you have already, most places, there are some states that allow same-day registration or late registration, so if you're in one of those states, please, jump on board if you have not registered already. But if you're registered to vote and you haven't already voted because you don't have early voting, I don't have early voting starting for another 4 days in this state, but once that happens, trust me, I will be there with bells on. This is a critically important election, critically important, easily the most important of my life. We need everyone on board for this, folks. There can be no one to sit this one out. We need everyone there. So we got that going on. Vote now, exclamation point, vote now. And the last thing that I want to mention, which I've been talking about before, is just this. which is, thanks, Arudnell. Good to see you, by the way. October 2nd in Maine, weeks ago now. Yeah, and I mean, I'm just very heartened by all the early voting, just because some people are like, well, maybe that means that fewer people will vote on the day. I'm like, I don't care so long as they're voting. I mean, that's all that really matters, honestly. So just make sure they're out and voting. And then last, the Athos thing that you can see right there. This is Athos's anthology In This Moment, which, as I've talked about, I think is a very important anthology, and I hope people will jump on board to support it. It is gradually moving up there, but it's still way, way short of the goal that it needs to reach, and there are about 9 days to go. So if you want to support an anthology which I think has some importance, as well as being what's going to be a good anthology of fiction, nonfiction, and even art and other forms, all documenting this moment in the minds of creatives, mostly from a very diverse creative pool, then please consider jumping on board to support that, because I do think it is a good and worthy project. Schedule-wise, we've got yeah, exactly, garlic tofu, exactly. On the schedule, we have got Erebor Adventures going on now. Then at 4 p.m. today, we will have D&D with GOG Storm King's Thunder, which will be pretty cool. Tomorrow night, we will be back on Wednesday evening with Community D&D. Shadowed Mage is feeling better, so it looks like we should be all systems go, I think. Actually, wait. I'm not 100% sure about that, because there may be a player who had to reschedule. So we may not have, I correct myself on that. I don't know if we'll have Community D&D tomorrow. It depends. The players still have to figure it out for sure. So it'll either be this Wednesday or next Wednesday. We'll see one way or the other. I don't want to speak wrongly about that. And then Thursday we are off. Friday I'll be back with Esper Genesis. That is definite. And then Saturday I will be continuing with Final Fantasy VII Remake. And next week, ladies and gentlemen, the epic conclusion to Infinity and Beyond Curse of Strahd over Halloween, going from Friday night the 30th into Saturday the 31st of Halloween. So it's going to be awesome. All right, with that said, the time has come for us to get going, and so I'm going to unmute myself so that the fine folks know we're ready to go, and then I'm going to unmute them, and then I'm going to slide over to reveal that the crew is here. They are prepared, they are ready, and they are holding up books. I didn't see what that was, Terry, but
not a book. That's my clipboard.
Well, I didn't see what it was. You just flipped up a flat thing. Yes, the clipboard, the clipboard of power. I hope everyone and wait, what is it voting? Is that a vote thing? Yes,
you
it's
voted.
An Yay!
Hey!
Early voting for us starts on the 24th, so I am excited to be able to do it. I will go there in person to a particular tech school where all the early voting is happening in my particular neighborhood. So, but let me welcome the wonderful crew of Adventures in Middle-earth here. And I will start by talking to the gentleman right below me, who has made some decisions about things that he will not do in the future. Based on that. Also, we'll make a good decision, which is to show off Icarus and Jelinek, which should happen all the time. Thank you very much for the unsolicited advertisement. I appreciate it, Tren. Thank you. But Tren, how's life with you and the universe and all that stuff on your side of the country, and who are you playing today?
As usual, very tired. Because I guess it was around 2 or maybe almost 3 o'clock. And I was like, oh, wait, that's right. I've got a live stream at 9. I need to go to sleep. And so I went to sleep. And I woke up about an hour later at 4, and I've been awake since then. And so it's like, and I'm like, I should just go to bed. And I keep forgetting that I'm glad we're actually going now, because now it's less likely that I will forget that I have a live stream in the right now. Less likely. But yeah, I was like, man, I'm really tired. I should go to bed. And I'm like starting to turn towards my bed. I'm like, oh, wait, no, I've got this. It's 3 hours now. I cannot go to sleep. I will never wake up. And so, yeah, a little crazy. So what he's referring to is that I ordered, I didn't feel like cooking ramen last night, and that's about all I have left in the house because I hate shopping. And I had tortillas and I had peanut butter jelly, but I had I had 2 peanut butter jelly burritos yesterday. Anyway. It's like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, but you make it with a tortilla and you roll it up. And never mind.
Yeah, no, I get the point.
So,
I want you to know that
I'm too European for this.
I want you to know that this is the life lived by talented people around this. Like, when not being a great voice actor, Trent decides what kind of bizarre tortilla peanut butter thing he's going to make with the stuff.
Right. So since I didn't have enough tortillas,
wait, I have to jump in. Quesadilla with bananas and Nutella. Fry that up and eat that. It's awesome.
Brad is an
But there's
excellent cook,
cheese
by
in
the way.
there.
Brad is an excellent cook, by the way. Can confirm. Have had Brad's food. So, yeah.
But there's cheese in there, right?
No, it's not an actual
No,
quesadilla.
not in this
Yeah,
case.
then
It's
why
like a
do you call it
dessert
a quesadilla?
variety.
If there's no cheese in it.
No.
Well,
doesn't
because
have
you know the
this.
rest of it, like tortillas, and you fry it on both sides just to make it warm.
It's a dessertadilla, Terry. It's a case dessert.
Yeah, because you're all deserted from good taste. Hey.
Hey.
Yeah, so I decided to go to Jack in the Box. Not Jack in the Box. That was yesterday morning. I decided to go to Taco Bell because I didn't want to cook anything. And so they had this new nacho party platter, which I bought because I usually get the nachos Belgrande, but it's never big enough to really satisfy my nacho craving. Well, that is $11 worth of I can't eat all this. And it's amazing because usually I spend a lot more money on Taco Bell, which you shouldn't. But it's like $11 and I can't finish it. That's probably what I should get from now. And I'm like, no. In retrospect, I shouldn't get that because I felt terrible after eating it. And I was like, I should just go lay down. I'm like, yes, that's perfect. Just eat a bunch of food and then go lay down and go to sleep. It's exactly how you're going to lose weight, Trent. It's perfect. And so I woke up an hour later feeling like shit. And I was like, you know what? I've got a beefy 5-layer burrito and 12 Cinnabon Delights left in this bag. I should eat those now, which I did. And I feel like ass. So I'm playing Bear. Excuse me, I fucked it up. I kept telling myself while I was laying there, say Thane first. And I did. Thane, Bear, the Hearthmender, dwarf friend who has one dwarf friend really in the world, but it's okay because the title applies. And he's about to go on a merry chase. Not chasing anybody named Mary, but you just.
But actually a merry chase.
Whatever. Yes, Brad. Is Brad next? I don't have the stream.
Brad is indeed next,
so
yes.
Brad
And this is I feel like I'm going from I feel like I'm going from the ridiculous in terms of food choice to the sublime with someone who makes much better food choice. No, mostly just because of the cooking. I do remember this from having done several workshops that Brad did a little bit of cooking for in that time. So but Brad, I don't know, do you have any other comments you want to make about quesadillas, about Nutellas? Like, do you want to weigh in on this dessert stuff? And in more important news, how are you and who are you playing?
Well, when I'm not making Nutella quesadillas, I am writing and doom scrolling and finding ways to cope with my doom scrolling.
2 weeks.
That's
to the end of doom scrolling
life at this point.
Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
But you know there's going to be more than that. Don't say that. There's going to be more than that.
Got to get people 2 weeks, man. You got to get them to 2 weeks. Got to get them to the 2 weeks.
All right. Okay, fine.
Yeah, so things are going fine. I'm right in the midst of a lit reactor class, which I've mentioned a few times on this show. If people are curious about lit reactor, you can go to litreactor.com, and it's really just for writers to offer writing classes. You can't sign up for my particular class at this point anymore, but there's plenty of others out there. So if you're curious about it, go take a look. And I'm playing Bolo, Bolobras Took, with his trusty iron pan flank searer, and he's ready to rejoin the party. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I have to be careful not to make my campaign into a Monty Hall one just by giving you a +1 cooking pan right out of the gate. Like, I feel like I'm setting the wrong tone, and you're going to be expecting like hats.
It has to be that point to get to the +1.
Right? Yeah, exactly. I'm expecting that there's just going to be like particular. When do I get my apron of perfect searing and all that? But anyway, it's but I look forward to seeing how Bolo conducts himself as the party looks like they're heading towards being connected and united again, which will be nice to see. Moving right along, we have, of course, the amazing Terry Tunes, who is currently sitting in Finland, as we discussed before, and so.
On the way to the Netherlands.
Yeah, exactly. On the way to Sweden and then to the Netherlands. That's how this works.
Yes, of course.
It's funny because my daughter right now
Finland.
is working on geography with her mom. So I'm handling English and history. Her mom is handling geography and science. And so they were working on geography just as I was coming up here. So she was talking about, so Dad, just you can see, and she shows me, here's the Pacific Ocean. She has one of those, blank maps that she's filling in. And she's like, so here's the Pacific Ocean, but it wraps around, and she flips it over. So I wrote also Pacific Ocean on the other side. I'm like, yes, Pacific Ocean and also Pacific Ocean. So this is my geographic knowledge. Anyway, sorry, a complete tangent. How are you, Terry? How's life in the universe? In the Netherlands, not in any of those other silly places I mentioned before. And who are you playing?
Yeah, I'm currently in pandemic land, as it's also called.
Oh.
So that's fine. But, not going outside, just staying inside. So all good. That's my boyfriend coughing in the background in case you heard that. So that's also great.
Unfortunate timing after pandemic land, yeah.
No, it's fine. Still gonna sign up for a test once I get home. Anyway, I'm doing great. Everything is fine. My coffee started to kick in, so now I'm a bit hyper, which is nice. Yeah, what else? Don't think anything new happened since last session. So just that, I discovered my notes from last week, and most of the paper are little doodles of various D&D characters.
Those were your notes, huh?
Yeah, those were my notes.
Okay.
Also back in school, so nothing changed. God. But yeah, aside from that, just trying to avoid any talk about Baldur's Gate 3 on the internet, which is really difficult when half of the YouTube channels you follow are either about classic PC games or about D&D. So, rip me. So yeah, aside from that, I am playing Thane Inge Homefinder, daughter of Ida, Council of Dine II, who is a dwarf from the Erebor, and now, what do you call it, clan chief? Is that the name for it? Clan chief? Clan head?
Yeah, yes, although I hadn't added that to your official title yet. Just, Thane Inge Homefinder, daughter of Ida, Council of King Dine II, Dwarven Wanderer.
Dwarven Wanderer. Yeah, but what do you call the person who runs a clan? I don't know.
It could be a clan elder.
Clan elder, but she's not the oldest, so by
well,
far.
but it's more. But it's more like do you elder doesn't have to just be age,
Yeah. Well, I have to look that stuff up.
Yeah.
Over here it would be called Oberhaupt, which literally means top head. But head, not like that, not a head, but a head. So
I really wish it could be Thane Inge Homefinder, top hat, daughter of Ida, just please.
Where is home? Here it is.
Yeah, exactly. Here is my.
That gives a whole new meaning to the saying "home is where you hang your head." So
I have this image of this stereotypical 19th century Bavarian mayor though, with the top hat and the jacket and just this well, welcome everyone. I don't know.
The chain and everything.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, oh man, the sash, The
do they? No, they don't. We don't do sashes here. We have the special chains.
Well, yeah, right.
The very intricate ones. I say we, I'm not even Bavarian. That's a general German thing. Anyway, I'm playing Ingham. She is a dwarf from the Erebor, a top hat, and she is a wanderer, and she has a trusty pony sidekick named Leman. Who has plot armor.
That is right.
And I need to mention that because I know that the DM from my other group is watching, and he runs Tomb of Annihilation and keeps killing off our characters, so that's fun.
Yeah, there is no plot armor in Tomb of Annihilation. It's not, it doesn't exist. But it is a great pleasure to have Terry with us, and it is also a great pleasure to have Amal with us, who, despite claiming to be tired, looks very sunny. Although I suspect it is partly because of the. Is that now? What is on the hair? Is that?
Oh, this is a headband that my friend Betsy Withy made. She makes, whenever I wear hair flowers and stuff like that, they're all made by her. She has a wonderful Etsy shop called The Fairy Market, and I'll totally drop a link to it in the
yes, please do.
chat.
Very cool.
But yeah, all of the it's all it's free hand embroidery on silk, and she just does absolutely stunning work. She can make brooches, scarves. Actually, this scarfy situation here is also her work. She knits and then stitches the silk into it. She's a goddess of fiber arts, basically.
That's awesome. Speaking of that, Mal, it looks like you, despite your concerns about how you'd be able to do this, you have made significant advances in your background and so on. Like you've got, paintings and books and all on the shelf now, and like
a Lady of Shalott over here.
Yep.
I've got a bookshelf. I've got some awards there. I
some
actually
awards.
Yes, only a small.
I was gonna say that's a sampling of the amount. The rest are kept in a truck outside. Oh, congrats, by the way. Guess who got another?
Let me bring you into the trophy room.
Exactly. Guess who got another award, and guess who called it?
Listener.
Guess who called the fact that a certain winner of an Ignite Award would again be "This Is How You Lose a Time War"? And Mal's like, "Well, it's a lot of good, hard, tough people, big ballot, blah blah blah." Mm-hmm.
It's true though. That has never not been true. It has never not been true. Also, I will point out there are several awards we have been nominated for that we did not win, and therefore that it's not a straight sweep across the board. But it is still always a delight, and it is nice to have in common with LeVar Burton this this kind of award. So because he received the Ignite Award for I think best podcast and best community service situation. So but yes, Time War, this book won the Ignite Award for best novella, and it was a very lovely thing. But I highly recommend, if you're not familiar with Fire Magazine or with the other nominees of the Ignite Award, I cannot enough recommend that you look them up, because they're doing such great work, and the magazine is truly superb. It's so beautiful. It's going to introduce you to so many fantastic writers, and yeah. So anyway, that's my thing. In terms of other stuff, I'm very happy with how things are beginning to go in the room. I have an ambition to this bookshelf has a back. It's not like the wall behind it. That's the kind of pale back of it. And I have ambitions to put like peel and stick wallpaper on the back of it to kind of maybe give it a bit of a arts and crafts situation. And there's more art that's going to go in the blank space of there. I'm trying to make this pretty. So other than that, I am playing a character called the River, who is a woodman of Rosgobel, who is a fighty bard. She has axes and a harp. Axes not to be confused with guitars. She does not have guitars, but she does have one harp. She had two, but left one of them for a dragon. And
for good
then,
reason, though. For good reason.
For good reason. I hope Raynar is making good use of that enchanted harp. Anyway, and she and her faithful hound of Mirkwood named Stone are pals, and she is currently very, very sad.
Yes, very sad, and we need to talk about why, because last session was a little intense. I would say it is fair to say. I actually brought this up on our D&D roundtable, Masters of the Dungeon, a couple of days ago, talking about the loss of this NPC. And my co-host, Little Red Dot, was like, "I love doing that. You just pull an NPC from them when they've gotten into it." I'm like, "Well, okay. I wasn't like trying to do that. I mean, that wasn't my intention really. But it turned out to be that was how it happened. So." Let us fire up the music here, and let us get moving and talking a little bit about what happened in our last session. The party has been trying to track down the notorious bandit Longo, who, as it turns out, was responsible for a lot of the attacks that have been happening of late on the fine citizens of Dale and its environs. And so the party was first taken away from their original course, sent off into the wilderness to find what they thought would be the sort of the hideout, essentially, or at least, be able to track his trail. What they ended up finding instead was an ambush. They managed to fight it off, being, of course, the heroes of Dale. I mean, these are people who have dealt with dragons, bandits, no big deal. It was a little bit close, but thanks to some carefully applied use of force and an occasional bag of flour, the party was able to escape that and then returned, headed back towards Escaroth and Dale, recognizing that they had made a mistake and that obviously Longo had set this up to get them away. What they discovered when they were on their way away was that while they had been gone, the bandits had taken this opportunity to ransack the house of Kelda, the seamstress that the party had originally rescued outside Dale, that had gotten them on this wild goose chase, as it turned out, to head off to find Longo in the first place. They found Kelda there, specifically Inga and the River did, found her despondent. They had taken so many things from her, broken things down, and so forth, taken the needle, the silver needle as well. And Kelda, who was deeply depressed and saddened, the two, Inga and the River, decided that they were going to do what they could to track down the person responsible. In our last session, they began to do exactly that. They chased down a man who was discovered to be Vig. It was Inga who ended up catching up to him and tackling him in the end. And the party interrogated him to discover that Vig, although he was obviously had done some bad things, seemed not totally irredeemable. And a discussion with the River, and to a lesser extent with Inga, who was getting ready to go back and take care of Kelda, but that discussion yielded the idea that Longo had put them up to this, and that there were two characters who were waiting basically for the party again to be misdirected and taken off from their spot. These two men, Casper and Swain, that Vig warned them was going to be doing something to Kelda's house. The River let Vig go after discussing things with him, and Vig seemed surprised, very surprised, shocked even, and appreciative of what she had done. And then the River went after Inga, but by the time Inga returned, she found that it was already too late, that the shop had been set on fire. Inga did manage to break into the house, and when the River arrived, the two of them managed to pull Kelda, who had been trying to save, apparently, the work that was left, out of the house. They pulled her out of the house, but sadly could not pull her to safety. And Kelda expired in their arms, asking them to find her silver needle if they could. While Inga and the River were there, while this was all going on, I should say, Tani was engaged in trying to figure out what had happened to Queen Una, Bard's queen, who has been poisoned. And Tani realized that the only way to do this was to track down the person who originally poisoned Queen Una so he could find a suitable antidote. But Tani also realized, as he began to head out, that it was going to be difficult to do that openly. If you start screaming about looking for a person who's involved in poisoning people, you're likely to get that person who did the poisoning to run to ground. And so Tani knew that he also had to use some discipline and discretion in trying to track this down, because, as King Bard himself told Tani, this was a strike not just at the Queen, but at King Bard and at the realm in general. And while Tani gave Bard a little bit of advice to think about the rest of his people, Bard royally told Tani to get back in his lane, but also told him that he appreciated his advice and he would think about it, except that also go figure out who poisoned my wife, basically. And so Tani headed off in the direction of the rest of the party. While this was going on, Bolo, a new trial member, I guess we could say, of the Broken Stone Irregulars, was trying to gather information about where Longo's house could be found, where Longo's handout could be found. Or where Longo's hideout could be found, and ended up doing so rather memorably in a very intense episode where there was some sadness and grief and a lot of things going on. The comic relief was provided by Bolo becoming the new chef at the house known as, I believe, the Battered Mug, yes. The Battered Mug, where Bolo found the filthiest kitchen of all time, and also found apparently two twins, one very loud and constantly moving innkeeper, and one very silent and horrifically bad chef. Bolo took over and managed to restore some order to the kitchen. Within a few hours was considered this long-time standing person who, please don't ever leave us again, but also managed to gather information about the existence of Longo's hideout and the fact that there was, in fact, a place where Longo could be found. The other thing, which the GM will now admit, the Lore Master will admit to apologizing because the Lore Master forgot to add this little feature, the fact that there were rumors that Longo's hideout could be entered into by more than one route. So not just the obvious ones, but there were other routes through which one could enter this hideout as well. So Bolo set off for the location where the hideout was said to be, and I think Bolo actually, while he was on his way there, was going to try to eventually meet up with the party, while the River and Inga were there holding Kelda, deciding what they were going to do next. And I think a lot of it had to do with a certain amounts of vengeance against a certain bandit known as Longo. And so with that thing set up and with our recap done, I'm going to start this time with poor Tani, who last time spent a lot of time listening to people. And we're going to start with Tani here as he makes his way over to the east. And I want to ask, actually, Tani, what exactly you're doing as you leave here. I think you were going to be heading towards the party generally, but I don't know for sure. So tell me where you're headed and the route that you're taking and so on. You can also hear these bells, I should mention, clanging in the distance to the east of the city, for whatever that means. It usually suggests that there is some alarm of some kind that has been raised in that area, but, you know, Dale is a pretty big city, so you may have heard those bells before. What would you like to do, Tony?
I believe, if I remember correctly, part of the intent was to head over towards any apothecary that might be over there, and it was...
Yes, in Brokenstone. Yes, that's right. Mm-hmm.
That it was over there, even though going in and asking, much like what you were talking about, going in and saying, I'm looking for a really insidious, long-acting poison, is going to be a little bit too much of, here's my entire hand of cards, look!
Yeah.
You know, kind of thing. So, but I had also been told that Kelda's house was over there, so that's, you know, it was kind of a two-pronged thing.
Are you headed to the apothecary first before going to Kelda's house?
No, I wanted to know where the apothecary was.
Okay. Well, there are several of them that you could gather information about. The reason I ask is if you're going to look for the apothecary, I'm going to have you do an investigation check when you get to Brokenstone. Or you could go to Kelda's house first and then do that. So it's totally up to you in terms of what you think Tani would do.
I think the plan was to get to meet up with everybody else.
Get the party together first.
Okay. Yeah, tell them what I found thus far, because I'm not going to be able to do that investigation without being recognized for exactly who I am, and something more insidious might be necessary.
Okay, so if you make your direct route then towards the bells and towards where you were told Kelda's house was, that would put you about here, I would say, Tani, when you're beginning to cross over this bridge that leads into Brokenstone, where you can see what is obviously some clouds of smoke that are coming from the north. So your token would be, so if I put you, I'm just going to move you for a second. Yeah, exactly. If you're right there, you can see that there is smoke rising up here. There are some screams and bells ringing from over in this direction. And so that is also, as it happens, where you think Kelda's house is supposed to be. So you could head in that direction if you wish.
Oh, yeah, especially once the screams become evident, because that's, oh, damn, and, double time.
Yep. When you get over there, you can see you arrive when a lot of the fire, it looks like there is indeed, the smoke is coming from a fire, which now seems to have largely been put out. And there's just a lot of smoke in the air. You see a lot of soot-stained faces, a lot of people kind of stumbling along, orders being shouted. There's a guard or two now that has arrived and is sort of gathering information apparently from people standing outside the house. But you also note, actually the first one I think that you note is Stone, who is lying on the ground with his head between his paws, looking rather mournful for Stone, and is lying next to the feet of his mistress, the River, who, along with Inga, are sort of, I would say, kneeling / Inga's standing, looking down. They both look deeply sad, and you can see that in their arms is a motionless, staring upwards figure of Kelda, the seamstress.
Well, damn.
River looks up and sees Tani and just has like a split second of feeling like maybe there's hope after all for this, but it's quickly kind of vanished, and and she's clearly been weeping, and her voice is a little hoarse as she says that I couldn't help her. We got her out, but it was too late.
Inga's probably running back and forth, like helping to put the fire out.
Okay, and the fire's mostly out now, Inga, for the most part. But yeah.
So yeah, I guess. Yeah, no, Inga would just keep going until somebody stops her or the fire is like properly out. So.
Okay, so you see Inga moving back and forth, doing that.
Like not even paying attention to Tawny.
Okay.
Yeah, Tawny's just gonna let her keep doing it. It's often important just to have something to do, and in this particular situation, there really isn't anything to do. So he'll let her keep doing that.
River is sort of just she has by this point probably like pillowed something under Kelda's head and put her arms over her like this and says, "We'll want to arrange a funeral, I think. She didn't have any family," she said. God, we talked to her this morning. We were here, and then we saw someone running and gave chase, and he's always one step ahead.
That answers my first question.
We have learned a great deal, though, but God, it hardly seems the time. How did you fare with the Queen? Or wait, did I know that? Did I know that the Queen was ill? I'm sorry.
I think the last thing you knew, it was Tawny was going to the guards, I believe.
How did you fare?
Learned a few things, but and he kind of looks around at the people milling about. This is not the place for that discussion.
Come closer for a second. She just kind of beckons him over.
We'll lean way down.
And she says, "It's Clovis." We know where his hideout is. And we can probably speak of that anon.
Yeah. Not that there is tremendous urgency, but we should look into that with some measure of haste.
The last thing she asked was that we find her needle.
Seems things that are happening seem to have the same intent behind them. The erosion of a sense of hope or well-being or joy. Something so simple as an incredibly skilled seamstress. And he kind of grabs the edges of the River's cloak where the embroidery is. But such seemingly little things can bring so much joy. More people down here and less well-to-do spaces, as well as those on high, have their influence on the mood of an entire city.
So strange the way she talked about the needle. She seemed to credit it with her skill, that it was more than a tool to her, as if there were something special about it. I kept trying to say to her that it was only a tool, that she would... all of this art, this loveliness, all came from her, through it, and she could have other needles, but she seemed to have sunk some portion of herself into it, and losing it was losing herself.
And it was only a harp.
It was a really lovely harp. But I do know exactly where it is. And I can take some pleasure in thinking that the wild winds of was it Zaratnabar? I can't remember the name of it. Zarakhanbar. The wild winds of Zarakhanbar are playing it instead of human hands. I feel like it's a fitting occupation for such an instrument.
Don't forget that it was like destroyed by the dragon. Just saying.
No, it wasn't.
Wasn't?
No. It was just it was dangled there to make music.
Yeah, and then he blew like his ice breath into the tunnels and fried everything in there.
I think it was. My sense was that it was actually quite high up. I don't think it was destroyed. I think it was just like given up to his horde, basically.
Okay.
Luvatar, what happened?
You don't know. You never saw it. You never saw it yourself. Once it was, you did not go back in said tunnels that were iced out.
I am choosing to believe that they could still hear the strains of the harp being played by the wild, destructive winds.
Perfectly reasonable.
Anyway, sorry. That's all. That's my spin on it.
I would say it's about this point, as you're all sitting there, that you, Bolo, I would say right about now is where you are making your way up, and you also, having left the battered mug, are on your way north to meet up with the rest of the party. And I would say it's right about now, probably when your token is here-ish, that you can see there's a little bit of wisps of smoke. By the time you get there, it's not so much the smoke that you notice. It's now, mid-morning, so there's a lot of people at this point, but also there's a big commotion, and there's a very strong smell of sort of burned wood and cloth in the air, kind of a sulfurous smell, which is not the most pleasant thing that you've ever smelled before. And you can see that there are a few people that pass you with their faces covered in soot, sweaty, looking in many cases sad or with wide staring eyes. And as you continue your way up north, you can see your companions are all talking to each other and still on the ground, I would say. Because you said you had Kelda had her head in your lap, River, or did you leave it on the ground? You pillowed it, I know you said, and laid it on the ground carefully. So you're standing next to her, basically.
I think she's still on the ground. I think she's still like just sitting next to her, but
Okay.
I think she there comes a moment where I don't know, this is a weird thing to say, but if you've ever seen an actual corpse, there's a moment where it's just very, very clear that this is material and not the person who was in it and stuff. And I think that at some point River just realizes that that's what she's holding and puts her down gently as a consequence.
Okay. And so you see Bolo, Inga, although at this point she's running out of things to do, but sort of running back and forth from the house to the party. You see Stone lying on the ground. You see Tani looking grim, and you can see the River standing next to the body of Kelda, the seamstress, who I would say you probably know by reputation and might have seen her. You weren't technically with the party when Kelda was first found by them outside of Dale, but I would say that you still would have heard of her at least, although you might not have seen her directly, so you've heard of her. And so you can see that as you head up to them.
They also, I think Bola would know that like we were talking about her too.
Yeah, oh yeah, for sure.
The whole reason that,
Yep.
And you guys I knew you were on the way to speak to her, right?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, okay. So, I came sort of with the news, about Longo's hideout. I'm all proud of myself, but as I get closer to the smoke and the people and stuff, my bright face sort of fades and then collapses when I see Kelda lying there, and I just stop, nearby and go, oh no. And I just don't know what to do. I just kind of stand and I'm so sorry.
Thank you. River's face is also like extremely. River's face is caked in soot, except where like tears have streaked through it.
Yeah.
And like her voice is hoarse, not just from like, the keening and stuff, but from smoke inhalation.
Been there.
Oh God.
Big oof.
Big oof. And River at this point, like she's been on her knees next to Kelda up until this point, and she just sort of stands and dusts her knees off. And as like Inga is running back and forth at one point, I think River will just sort of put a hand on her shoulder and say Inga, and just like sort of stop her, and probably just like pull her into a hug because.
Yeah, like Inga doesn't respond at first, but like at some point, like once she realizes what's been going on, kind of snaps out of it and then like hugs back and sobs. And why did we fall for this stupid idiot? Ugh.
Twice.
Fire. There was a fire somewhere. Is it under control?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all just smoking.
Yeah.
Put out now.
Okay.
River looks at Bolo and says, I wish we were greeting you differently. But we need to speak, but we should make arrangements for Kilda first. I should. Oh, sorry.
Shall I fetch someone? Is there anything I can do?
So River kind of looks to the people who know Dale better, who are basically Inga and Bolo, right? And Tawny to some extent.
Wait, why would Bolo?
Not Bolo.
Not Bolo. That's true. He's new.
Yeah,
right?
no. Inga definitely would, and maybe a little Tawny, but only based on. I mean, all of
we
you
only
except.
have a big Tawny though, so.
That's right. All of it. Yeah, little Tawny. Yes, thank you. All of you though have spent, some time. I mean, you know a little bit obviously about Dale as the heroes of Dale. The only one who wouldn't sort of fit in that description would be Bolo, who wouldn't know about it as much. Although Bolo now knows a little more about Brokenstone, having spent, a day or so there, but only a little. I mean, there's only so much you can pick up that quickly. So, also I should say there is a guard that is headed in your direction. The group
Figured
of you.
that was coming.
So.
Oh, now there's coming a guard. Like,
yeah.
Wow,
There have been a couple
reliable.
there have been a couple with you, in fairness, that have been
okay.
also helping to put things out,
Oh,
but
okay.
only for like the last, few minutes probably. Inga, so.
To be fair, the guards are presumably mostly at the gate, and no. So River will kind of like sort of huddle them in and say, Kilda didn't have any family, so I don't know who will be claiming her funeral and so on, but I think that we should organize it for a few reasons. One, whoever set this fire wanted to destroy everything, any evidence of the way that the burglary was not one. And Tawny, Kilda spoke of having slept unusually deeply the night of the robbery. And it sounded like there might have been something unnatural in it. We thought there might be something in her tea or something like that, and we saved some of that for you. But I don't know if there's anything you can do in making a book of her death and reading something in it before laying her to rest.
There are a great many herbs that can help one sleep. Be very difficult to narrow down.
We took the teapot, right? Didn't we?
Yes, probably in Inge's backpack, which should be laying somewhere. Before she ran into the fire, she threw her backpack on the ground.
Yeah.
Thereby smashing the... No, just kidding. Damn it.
What was the teapot or a tea kettle?
It was
So yeah.
I believe it was a... well, was it a kettle? I think it was a kettle.
I thought it was the teapot.
Maybe
Whatever
it was a
was
teapot
steeping.
because it was inside. Yeah, no, you're right. It was a teapot, yeah.
It was whatever like the herbs would steep in
Yep.
and stuff like that.
Yep.
Not River, but me. I once saw a sea drama in which the poison was coated on the lid of the teapot instead of anything to do with the herbs brewed in it. Stuff like that.
Clever.
But yeah, I think we have a sample of the tea and the teapot that it was brewed in and stuff. But anyway, so River basically, like, what she wants to relate is that she feels clearly responsible for this and wants to like take on the funerary rites and things, but also, you know, to have the Middle Earth equivalent of an autopsy.
Okay.
Not an actual autopsy, but just like, yeah, we're not anyway.
No, not here.
So, as you're sort of thinking about talking a little bit about that, the one of the guards walks over, and seeing all of you and recognizing at least 3 of the 4 of you as being, the heroes of Dale, kind of, and says, "I am sorry to disturb you, but I must gather some information. I saw that you were trying to save this woman's home. Did you see anything that might have led to this in the first place?" And he's sort of directing this to all of you generally.
So, do we know this guard? Have we met him?
No. You don't know him. You might have seen him around, but you don't know any names or anything like that, and it's not one of the captains that Tani knows or anything like that.
Can I do an insight check?
Sure, to determine what, though?
To determine, River is a little suspicious of anyone asking questions at this point, about what happened, and...
I see.
Yes.
It's the paranoia check, I got it.
The paranoia check, yes.
Yeah, dig it.
Also, just to remind myself, Inga found, like, the fire starter, right?
Yes, right inside the door. And I would say that was because I think, I don't remember if you were holding it or carrying it, Inga, but the point was you saw it like right at the end of our last session that it was inside, not the door, I'm sorry, inside the window on the ground near the wall where it would do sort of
Yeah, I
maximum
think
damage.
at this point she would have picked it up, and otherwise, even if not, after the fire went out, Inga would have gone into the ruins, I guess, at this point.
That's pretty
and
much.
would have searched for things.
Yeah, the I should say too, by the way, quickly, that the work that all of you did and the work that Inga did meant that the fire did not spread, which was a real threat to surrounding houses and roofs. But the inside, the roof itself, although a little scorched, is basically okay. But the inside of it is mostly gutted, especially in that workshop.
Yeah, I guess Inga would mainly try to make sure that if Kelda still had like any valuables, that those don't get like, snitched by looters.
Yep. So, yeah, I mean, this seems like, at least the way he's acting, River, seems to be like a fairly normal, straight-ahead question. Like, he is speaking politely. He also seems to be pretty convincingly dressed as a guard, for what that's worth, and in the livery of Dale. So it seems reasonable.
River says, it's a grim business, officer. There's someone seems to have started this fire on purpose to harm Kilda, and they succeeded in that.
And you can see his face gets very serious. And to harm her, do you have some proof of the fire being set?
I do.
Right here, and Inge reaches into her pocket.
And it's this kind of jar, I believe, that I mentioned, which is now somewhat split around the edges, and there's like a black pitch-like substance, tarry pitch-like substance in the inside. So he kind of looks at you holding it. He reaches out to take it, if you'll let him.
Yes.
And so he looks at it, and his face gets even more grim, and he says, I saw some of these being used at a battle a long time ago. I did not think they would be used to attack the fine people here. And he shakes his head.
What battle?
5 armies. There were... And he kind of like pauses and says, they were used for different kinds of siege equipment to break them down. I saw them being used at that time, but he said they are not uncommon. At least they weren't uncommon in war. He says, but, and he looks around, this is broken stone, and if anything is to be procured that is not legal, it can be found around here. And he sort of turns back and says, when did you arrive here on the scene?
Too
when was
late.
that?
Yeah, like...
How long have we been here? I don't know.
Probably about 15 minutes or so, 20 minutes. You got there a good, like, 10 minutes after 5 to 10 minutes after the fire had started.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you relate that to him, he says, he nods slowly, and he says, well, he said, I appreciate that you helped to put this fire out, but all of this I'll have to report to my superiors. And he sort of looks around at some of the people who are kind of milling about, and he calls to another guard, gather them together. We need to speak to each of these people one by one. And he says, one person, you there! And he sees there's one person who's like starting to turn to move away, and he's like, no one leaves this area, come back. And the person sort of sheepishly turns around, and she kind of makes her way back to the rest of the group. She doesn't look, before anyone jumps to conclusions, she doesn't seem to be looking like Deadly Bandit type, as much as just like, I don't want to be part of this thing. And so the guard, seems to be falling into his official duties and habits, so to speak. Go ahead, River, you were going to say something.
I was going to say, so what are the names of the people who we know did this? Caspar and
Swain were the ones that Vig said were going to be looking in to do something like this, yes. You didn't see them, but that's what you heard.
Yeah, I'm also just...
I feel like one of us did see it, not Tawny, obviously, but I feel like like Inga may have seen 2 people standing near, like loitering nearby.
I don't think so.
No. What happened was before we left, there was wait, what's his name?
Vig?
Yeah, Vic, right, sorry. Vic was standing there, and he was running away as soon as he saw us,
and you
or
guys
noticed that
caught
we
him.
saw him. And
But
then we chased him, and while we were gone, the fire was lit.
Yeah, I don't remember that there were 2 loitering when you got back, Tawny. Maybe I'll have to look again.
No, not when I got back. No, Tawny didn't see any of that.
No.
They could have sworn that one of the 2 ladies had seen it.
I don't think so. I think it was I think that I'm pretty sure that the only thing that we know of them is their names. Although I think I can't remember if I ever asked for a description of them or not, but
You didn't.
Yeah, so
Because you were in a rush too. I mean, there's
exactly. So I think that all she has is their names, but also knows that they work for Longo. I think River will say to the guard, I know you have your work to do and you should do it, but we know who did this, and believe that they're unfortunately long gone.
Who?
So,
Who was responsible for this?
I'd rather not say. I'd rather not say right now, if that's all right. We'll have to. We'll be speaking to your superiors anon. But I say this only to suggest that you not be too harsh with the people gathered here. Everyone here was working very hard to put out the fire.
And he looks around at them and he says, very well, although had some of these been more aware in the first place, such a fire might not have started. In this area, this is a neighborhood where no one seems to know each other until something happens to one of them. But I will take your advice under advisement, and I will consider it. While we do the interrogation, you are free to do as you please, but I would ask that before too long, you come to see us at the barracks, report to the captain. The captain will also want to speak to Haken, no doubt. Now, you have not heard the name Haken. You might have heard it in passing, but Tani has definitely heard the name Haken because you just dealt with him.
Right.
But I don't think you two, Inga or the River, actually all three, or Bolo, have heard Haken before, except just by maybe his name occasionally. But Tani, you've definitely heard that name.
What's that again?
Haken.
No, I mean like, who is Haken?
Oh, he's the sneaky bureaucrat.
Oh.
The sneaky bureaucrat who is definitely not our big bad at all. Yeah. He's just very nimbly minding the king's affairs while the king is distraught with his grief over Queen Una, and is super not suspicious at all and is doing a great job.
Yeah, definitely misspelled bureaucrat, but that's fine.
He votes for the bureau party. So the guard sort of nods and says, I must tend to what I need to here, but again, keep a wary eye. Your presence is of great value here, but you're also, and he kind of looks at you, conspicuous by your presence. Just to keep in mind.
Yes, thank you.
And he nods.
What was your name?
And he says, Tanner.
Well met, Tanner. Well, not. I wish we were meeting under better circumstances.
It is,
but thank you.
These days, commonly met, miss. It is in these conditions that I find myself doing most of my work. And Tanner, the guard, turns around and heads back to deal with some of the people who are kind of milling about and are already speaking to another one of the guards there. So that leaves the four of you plus Stone, and one of the people, actually two people, come over to Kelda and prepare to gather her up, and they kind of look up at you and say, one of them says, "And the guards over there told us to bring her forward. She's got to be brought to the barracks. They're going to want to do and to see what might have killed her with, well, they need an investigation," they said, "but they'll treat her carefully. I'll make sure she did. She embroidered something once for my ma, many, many years ago. It's a sad day, it is."
Yes. But, and River looks to Tawny as like, but we're going to do our own investigation. Unless we all go to the barracks with her, I don't know.
Inga would stay behind in that case and keep searching the ruins for anything else that could be important.
The barracks are on the other side of the city too. So, I mean, it's up to you, but you know, Tani's already been there. If you want to do your investigation, they're not asking you to come with them at the moment.
River is just really reluctant to let let Kilda go, for emotional reasons as well as tactical investigation reasons, but also doesn't want to leave her lying in the street.
And they wrap her, by the way, gently in a sheet. And you notice that it seems to have some of the same embroidery, actually. And so apparently it's one of her own pieces of work that managed to survive that they're using to cover her over.
Aww. River runs her hand gently over the embroidery and says, "Wait, I think she'll say, could you bide here but a moment, before taking her?"
And the two look and, "Aye, miss."
All right. So my sense is, like, if Inga wants to investigate the ruins of the house, I'm reluctant to split the party again, but
I am also reluctant to do that.
so, like, we could do that, but I also feel like, I mean, we looked around the house before it burned, and then we found, like, evidence of arson. I don't know what else we're gonna find, but I mean, we can definitely look, but I'd rather we look together, I guess. But also, and I found, I don't know, maybe the burnt out shell of Kilda's house is a good place for the four of us to talk together.
No one else is in it, that's for sure.
Yeah. So, yeah. Well, anyway, so I guess we can do that if they're not going to take her body right away.
No, it looks like they're willing to wait for a few minutes while the guard is talking to people who are gesticulating in various directions about things related to this, apparently. More or less. Like, look over there, it's over here. Yeah.
Bippity boppity.
Semaphore.
So, yeah.
Okay. All right, so all of you are heading into... Go ahead, Bolo. If you were speaking.
Well, as they've been talking and stuff, is there like a small shrubs or trees or even grasses around somewhere
Not
nearby?
really here. You're in the middle of a city. Not really. No, you're in the middle of an alley street. Or,
Okay.
sort of a narrow street.
No grasses growing between stones and stuff like that. I just need a tiny bit.
Yeah, you might. Well, if you're only looking for a little bit, you probably could find some. Yes, I would say, because it's also fairly damp in this area, so you might be able to find even a little bit of moss or something. Probably that. Yeah.
Just little grasses. So I'm just gonna, while they're talking and stuff, just weave a little circlet, a braid of grasses, twigs, anything like that. Just like a little symbol to put on Helda before she goes.
Okay.
Just a little thing from the Shire to go with her.
Okay. I have a question. Are you trying to keep that quiet from the rest of the party, or are you just doing it and then putting it on top?
In the
In
open.
other words, okay.
I'm not doing it quiet.
So they would notice it, is my point.
Just some, yeah.
Okay.
When River notices that, she, like, her eyes well up a little bit, and and she looks at Bolo and then looks away and just says, "Thank you, Bolo."
I didn't know her, but she touched a lot of people, I can tell. So I go off with the group once we're ready to have a chat.
Yeah.
So you can make your way into the shell of the house, and as I mentioned, the workroom is completely destroyed. I mean, there are blackened pieces of cloth. The wood is broken. There are several tables. The chair that Kelda once sat in, of course, is completely just basically kindling, scorched, half burned. There is this strong smell, strong sulfurous smell in the air. And the thing that you notice even as you're looking is that on a lot of these things, on a lot of these pieces of burned out wood and so forth and cloth, there are again these little bits and flecks of pitch. And what you think probably happened was that this device that was planted was basically designed not just to burn, but at a certain point to explode, sending flaming pitch onto these things, which makes it worse, right? Because it means that you've got this stuff on each of these bits of the furniture. This was designed for sort of maximum damage. And the rest of the house is also burned, including the bedroom and the kitchen, although not nearly as much. The focus seemed to be in particular the workshop here, this front area. Seems to have been the biggest thing that was there. And of course the shutters are, as you know, mostly destroyed because you did that, as were the door. The door is mostly sort of knocked down with, rents in it from Inga's battle axe and so, her great axe and so forth. So that's what you see. There's not a whole lot that's here except a lot of ash and wood, burned cloth, and debris.
I guess what Inge would be specifically looking for is maybe a box or a binder of letters or something like that.
Okay, in the workshop or in her bedroom, or
like in general, would be looking around, check drawers and stuff.
Like she's looking
that.
for a black box.
yeah.
Yeah, just because
the FAA
because
shows
could have
up
some
all right.
information on why Kelda was
Yeah, actually, yeah. I mean, we don't know. A thing that we never asked was where she got the needle or how she
No, she told us.
Oh, she did?
She got it from her ex.
Oh, you're right, she did. Yes, that's right. That's right.
Right.
Her yes. Wait. It was her lover who went off to war, was it?
And never returned.
And never returned?
Obviously a long time ago.
How old is Clovis?
Clovis looked to you to be middle-aged, so for a hobbit, so we're talking 50, 60.
So it could work out that Clovis could maybe be the son of...
I feel like she'd have said if he was a halfling. I feel because
I guess I just assumed, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that would have, I don't know. I feel like that would have come up, but I'm actually.
I write down.
But it's interesting that there's so her lover had gone off. Ronar was his name.
With eyes like a storm. That's what I wrote down.
Eyes like a storm.
Yeah.
Who's Clovis? Willow asks.
Oh, wait, we're not talking.
Right.
Are we actually talking about?
I thought we had.
No, I think
display.
we are. I think this is.
This
We're
is. I
still
assume
being-
that was out of game. Although now
Yeah.
that you're in looking around, I'm gonna have you make an investigation checking to look for this black box, such as it is.
I think that.
You're looking for a key.
Yeah.
Yeah, so and River and Stone would want to help investigate as well.
I think each of you could make investigation checks, probably.
Ooh,
River.
natural 20! There we go. I find everything.
Yeah,
every
exactly.
clue that there ever was.
As you search, you realize that someone has set this place on fire. Wait a minute. So I mentioned the pitch before. You can tell from the way that the device was originally placed that this was also probably lowered there. If you had to guess, the windows, although the windows are now wrecked, so it's impossible to tell for sure, but probably, Inga, the windows were, the term that the criminal term was jimmied from the outside is what they said, to sort of basically unlocked from the outside, and then was lowered carefully, set on fire, and then the shutter was closed again, if you had to guess. And it was designed, as I mentioned, to sort of do maximum sort of destruction. The rest of what you find here, though, is not much. There is no black box that you can find, no box of letters that's obvious. If there were any things, they've long since been destroyed in this fire. It was a very intense fire also, so it's one of those things that burned, and it took a little while to put out, but it wasn't a super long burning thing. It was just very, very intensely hot. In her bedroom, as I said, it's less damaged. The bed is half functional, but it's still pretty burned, and there's scorch marks obviously everywhere. Probably the least damaged room is the kitchen, but there isn't a lot going on in the kitchen. It's just, it's there. It's the same thing as you saw. It doesn't look like anyone came through there.
Tony could check there for any possible poisons.
True. Yeah.
You will.
So also nothing under the bed or anything?
No.
No.
No. She looks like Kelda lived pretty simply. Didn't have a lot of extra stuff there.
Okay, but while looking, Inge would probably also check I'm assuming that Kelda would have had like a chest or something where she kept her clothes in.
There were, it looks to you, actually, like Kelda probably kept most of her clothes in her workshop, because there are definitely things that used to be like racks and like, places where not only the cloth, but there was, not a standing wardrobe, that's too much for it, but basically like essentially a rack with like a place where things with hooks, where like cloaks and things like that could be placed. It's not clear if that was stuff for clients that, went to her for embroidery, if it was hers, but in any case, that stuff is all like largely destroyed at this point. So no, she doesn't have a box like that. It seems like Kelda didn't have a whole lot in her house except, the basics of what she was doing. She was kind of, yeah.
I was like hoping to find like, like the equivalent of her old wedding dress or something.
No,
that
but
she
there's
could wear
nothing
for a
like that.
funeral.
Yeah, no.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I guess if we don't find anything, then
Oh, thank you.
do we find any valuables or anything?
The summon spell finally worked.
That's right. I would say no. The valuables probably would have been, I mean, based on what you had seen when you were in the workshop last time, even though the last time you were in the workshop, it was all like knocked over and stuff, but it was still around, you could still see it. And there was probably a fair bit of coin that could have been found from the embroidery work, which, as we've talked about, is exceptional. But since that embroidery work is destroyed, you don't find any kind of monetary stuff. You do find some basic, like, and if Tani's handling the kitchen, I'll just mention that, Inga, you would be able to see that you do find a basic set of, like, there's a shelf with basically, like, some herbs, some flour. You can see a couple of pitchers of water. As I say, the kitchen, although there are scorch marks there, was largely not that much affected by the fire, because it was obviously, it's towards the back of the house as opposed to the front where the fire was set, and it's its own separate room. And the back door was slightly ajar. When you left, you may remember you had been checking in the back, and then you left and went running after Vig. And so there was a little bit of extra air there, and maybe that helped. But in any case, the kitchen doesn't seem to have been that badly damaged. So there is, however, and you had you already had the teapot. So yeah, we already talked about that. Exactly, Arudinel, yeah. A dressing rack like at a theater.
So while we're investigating, I think River will also sort of try to catch Tawny and Bolo up on what exactly happened. So she'll start by saying, we think we've learned who Longo is. You remember, well, actually you wouldn't remember, Bolo, but we were first directed out of the city towards this camp of bandits that turned out to be a wild goose chase, by a hobbit called Clovis, who we met at the gates of the city the first time that Kilda was robbed, and we didn't think anything of it at the time, but it's been a suspicion growing in my mind, like a shadow, that there was something wrong about that. It was odd, the confidence with which he sent us off and stuff. And the man who we chased down an alley as we came out of here, we spoke to, and he confirmed that Longo is a halfling who matched Clovis's description. So we think we know who that is then. We think we know where he is, or where his hideout is. But it seems like there is more to him than just that. The man we spoke to said that he had a voice that seemed like it would just put you in a dream, or convince you that the world was a way it wasn't. He seemed to be waking from some dream when we spoke to him, almost. So I don't really know what to make of it. I don't know, Bolo. Do you know of any?
Clovis himself.
Sorry.
Clovis/Longo himself made one feel that way.
Yes.
Oh.
Yes, and he had spoken to him directly. This wasn't rumors and shadows of him. He seemed to actually have taken orders from him.
Well, I'll fill in some of the details that I went through. I tell you about Brindle, finding Brindle and the Broken Stone Irregulars, and insinuating myself into that group, and promptly telling them that to prove my worth, I would go find out something about Longo. And I think I found his lair, but you say you found it as well?
Yes, and like she says whatever the information was about that to see if it.
Yeah, I do the same. I just I want to see if they match because I can't recall what the other one was. But there's a particular house in I forget what the neighborhood is called, the eastern side here, that's kind of run down. It's kind of a derelict place with a tower that's crumbling, as I recall. Is that what you found?
Is that what we found, Arv?
Yeah, more or less in terms of the general vicinity. And actually, I think I may have said it to the north, but it's really more somewhere around here that were near some of the kind of in the southeastern corner of Brokenstone, somewhat near the keys that you could find over here. And the place in question, if it's to be believed, Bolo, was an old barracks back in the day, before the coming of the dragon and before all the stuff that happened to it. So it's since then been kind of supposedly abandoned, but according to your sources, maybe not so much now.
Can you point out again on the map where it was?
Sure.
Sorry.
Right around here.
Oh, okay. Right. So the south of us. So,
yeah.
Okay. So,
by the way, what is that thing?
That I think that may have been actually
the tavern.
It's a mug.
That was the
battered mug. Yes, there we go.
The battered mug.
Oh, okay.
I do have a shift later, you guys, so we have to hurry up about this.
That's true. You can already hear the screams for actual food emanating from somewhere in the Broken.
While Bolo's relating his exploits, actually, like River is just kind of like looking both sort of startled and impressed by the things that he has succeeded in doing, and yeah, I don't know. So yeah, and ends up once he's like related his tale, she says, "Bolo, this is very well done. In fact, I mean, of the four of us, you are probably the one who would be best positioned to continue making inquiries about what has happened. You've fit yourself this role truly superbly."
Brindle does seem to know quite a bit. I could probably get something from her. And now that I think about it, she did mention that Longo has been making a lot of moves to try to consolidate his own power, at least in Brokenstone, and perhaps the whole city.
You know what startles me? Oh, sorry. Go on.
Well, I only mention it because the Irregulars could be an ally. We are only 4, but the Irregulars are quite large in number.
You know, it also strikes me that the way that Kilda's home was ransacked was done to suggest, it seemed, that burglars had done it, and just that it was a run-of-the-mill sort of robbery to take her valuables, but it really seems like they did know what they were after and that they got it, and then it just seemed as if they were trying to make it seem other than it was, perhaps to pin the blame on different robbers and so on.
Do we have any sense of, this is Bolo talking, the needle seems very important to Kelda herself. Was it more than that? Was there something more to that needle than meets the eye? Or was there something else about Kelda that we're overlooking? I'm not clear why she was a focus of anyone.
Just
Yeah.
know that she got the needle a long time ago from somebody she loved.
This is something that is striking me, that there seem to be a number of connections to soldiers here. Longo is stationed in the old barracks. This fire starter is something that has to do with war, with sieges, and the connection to Kilda's love having been a soldier who never returned. It feels like there is something here to do with old wars and old wounds. Tony, what did you learn?
Queen is being poisoned.
What?
Yeah, what she said. What?
There's a plot to poison her, or she is being poisoned over time?
It has been a long and insidious application that seems to have bypassed all measures of detection through tasters and everything else. The healers have no idea where it came from, but it has been going on for weeks, and she is in rather dire straits.
Did you figure out what the poison is?
No. But it
Good time
is...
check.
Mhm.
Sorry, how long has it been, how long were we away from town when we first left? Like,
Probably about 2 days worth, I would say, maybe 3.
So like Una's illness predates our
Yes.
arrival in
Yes.
Dale. Okay,
Yes.
cool. Just making sure. Sorry, please continue. I'm sorry to interrupt.
That's right. It's been going on for rather a long while. Presumably, as far back as when we started setting up the Haven. And for whatever reason, and there seems to be a bit of a clenching of his jaw of, frustration there. They did not see fit to seek out every healer.
Wait,
Whatever-
what? That makes no sense. Why would they? What?
Yes,
Surely you'd be among the first that the king would send for.
I would have thought so as well, but he seemed to think that to send out word would be to let slip that something was amiss with the queen. And that secrecy seemed of greater import to him.
That was ill done, Tony. I'm very sorry. I'm sorry for us all. That. I mean, had you Wait, do you think there's a connection between the queen's illness and the theft of Kilda's needle?
This is why I said that there are people who, through their actions, through their recognition by the people of the city of Dale and whatever else, whether they be lowly commoners or people who are upon high, that they bring their very nature joy. And that is part of why I suspect that these are very specifically chosen acts to break the spirit of, through 1,000 cuts, if need be.
But why?
Because I've heard it said somewhere, I don't recall exactly where, that people who have no hopes are easy to control. It's the never-ending story. Anyway.
And Bard is the king?
Is
And so, okay, so this is his wife?
his wife,
Yeah.
Una the Fair.
Right, so what are we waiting for? I would say we go to where this Longo asshole is supposed to be and kick his ass.
No, there's. I mean,
What do you mean, no?
I want nothing more than to find this needle and stab it through both his eyes. But it seems like there is something. I mean, this has the air of a conspiracy, doesn't it? I mean, what you say, Tawny, about it being, an attack aimed at the spirit of the city, that may well be. But I can imagine there are more mundane reasons to use the lowly elements of a city's underbelly to distract, to consolidate, if the queen is being poisoned, it must be by someone close to her.
The poison
Want me to punch the cook?
Like I said, whatever it is has gotten past the tasters
Mm-hmm.
and every other security measure that Bard put in place. But moreover, this poison is extremely potent and very rare. And I'm certain that I could have a chance of making an antidote, but that means I have to find the poison, which means I have to find the poisoner, which is part of why I wanted, and he turns toward Bolo, which is part of why I wanted to find you, because you are in the very unique position, more so than any of the rest of us, to seek out some of the seedier places and to ask questions that, were we to ask them, would raise far too many questions far too quickly. Not only revealing what's going on, but that we are looking into it. And as you said earlier, he always seems to be one step ahead of us. And I don't believe that he would be able to do that if he did not have wheels within wheels already churning. So, much like you, I don't believe that going directly at him, no matter how much we might want to put out his eyes with Kelda's needle, though I suspect that would disgrace the art with which she worked. There is more intrigue to this than we yet know.
Well, I wonder. Brindle is no friend of Longo's. He's moving into her territory. She's worried about what she's made for herself in this city. I wonder if I might arrange a meeting with her and us, and we could ask about contacts that Longo has. We may identify your poisoner, or we may in fact be able to find someone who could identify the poison itself.
Do you think, like, from the way you make it sound, she sounds like she is running some criminal organization? Do you really think she's gonna meet up with two Thanes, one of which working for her king? Why would she want to meet up with us?
I'd be willing to meet with her. But it's a good point, Inga. We have everything to gain from that kind of meeting, and there's no guarantee for her. I mean, does she know that you are that you are of our company?
She knows I have friends. I don't know that I've admitted my other goals with you, but I might be worried that she would think my interests too small to take seriously. If she saw that we were together and were working to defeat Longo, she might help us more than if I went to her alone.
I tell you what, perhaps it. I freely own that I am trying to be like not splitting party, and yet nevertheless.
Well, that's why I'm doing this too.
I know. Nevertheless, it's like, oh man, but it does make more sense for Bolo to be like the go-between and to just kind of relate to her the information he has from us.
Well, we could set up a meeting too, though, where the group is able to see and listen and maybe pick up on things that I might not, or just make sure that the area is safe, that kind of thing. That's a possibility
we disguise
too.
ourselves?
True.
Well, I think disguising ourselves individually might be fine, but we are still a Bjorning, a human, and a dwarf, and a dog,
Walk into
and a
bar.
hobbit.
It's the beginning of a good joke. Tawny disguises himself as a tree.
Yeah, I think we're noticeable. We're noticeable by our fellowship more than we are by our features. I think, but Bolo, it sounds like you have a very worthwhile alliance with this Brindle, and I wouldn't jeopardize it by making. I wouldn't jeopardize it by asking her to overextend her trust. If you were to relay to her information that you had from us, as if you gathered it from us, which in fact you did, that might be more useful as an exchange rather than proposing a meeting. Let her propose a meeting, if a meeting is to be had.
But how would she even know that I have a group of allies? I could reveal it to her.
Yes, I mean, out of character, you've already done that, right? Like, haven't you already told? Like,
no, my story was that I was new to the city, that I made my way with the group to the city, but wasn't affiliated with them. And so once I had made it, I was just looking for a way to make do.
Didn't Brindle basically suspect though? Like, didn't she kind of say to you that you can even go back and report to your friends and stuff like that? Like,
she definitely saw Bolo in the company of the Heroes of Dale before, although the rest of what Brad just said about Bolo is pretty much accurate in terms of what she said that she thought about them. So
and he told her that I just delivered a letter to them.
Yeah.
Because everything he told her was true.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely true.
Yeah.
Exactly. So
or is it? No, I'm just kidding.
So I think what River says is, I think it is known of us that we are not ones to turn away from anyone's requests for help or assistance or conversation, for that matter. We are not difficult to approach. You can absolutely say to her that you have learned this from us, overheard it.
Yeah. The trail led to you guys, and I picked it up. Sure. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, you've heard us discussing this in the wake of this terrible fire. You could also potentially tell her that we suspect that it was before the fire was set, a burglary was made to look as if it were done by run-of-the-mill smash and grabbers and so on. But at any rate, I think you are our best chance at tracking down whatever this poison is.
So is the main goal? I can talk to her about the robbery and Kelda's death, and because it may have a link. But our main goal would be to try to identify the poisoner that Longo uses, an herbalist of some sort, that would be sort of a windfall. And failing that, maybe she knows somebody who might be able to identify the poison being used. Would that be the goal?
I don't think we want anyone else to know that the Queen is sick. I think that is information we need to keep to ourselves.
And do we have any evidence of that, a sample of it or anything like that? Or
this is where Kilda's passing may actually, hopefully, have given us something to work with. If you can put it about that you're trying to look into a poison that affected Kilda, perhaps that might disguise our true purpose. We are, in fact, Tawny, actually, can you look at these? I'm like to pull out the teapot and herbs and stuff that we still have that Kilda used. If the same person, there are many ifs, but if Kilda was affected by some sort of substance, it doesn't seem to strain the bounds of imagination that it might have been obtained from the same person, the same apothecary or herbalist that might have supplied the other poison. So perhaps seeking out the source of whatever affected Kilda might lead us to the Queen's poisoner. Then again, I could be wrong entirely about this. Maybe she just slept deeply because she was elderly. I don't know.
well, I mean, we could at least shake the bushes and see what birds fly out. I could set up describe the poison as well as I can and intimate that we think it was applied to Kelda, and describe the robbery and see what Brindle might know.
Brindle knows anything about the needle, or indeed about Rokar. Was it Rokar, the partner?
Ronar.
Ronar, sorry. Or if she knows about Ronar, or anything to do with what it is about this needle that Longo wants.
Okay. Well, if we're set, then I could go and make inquiries.
Before you go, Tawny, do you want to look at these things?
Yeah.
Okay, so you're going to hand him you're handing him the tea pot and any of these herbs from the kitchen, or like which herbs are we talking about?
The things that she used as tea.
Yeah, okay. So I would like you to make a medicine check for me, please, Tawny.
Okay.
Oh, in case it wasn't clear, because like way earlier when Inga was like searching the house, she doesn't happen to find anything like hidden underneath any floorboards that now might have cracked open.
No, she was actually looking for that. It seems like not so much.
Because I remembered Kelda was a halfling.
No.
So
No, not
like
a halfling.
she wouldn't know?
Not a halfling.
No? Why did I write down that she's a halfling?
I don't know. That may explain why you thought that her lover was a halfling.
Yeah, no. She's just short because she's elderly. I think she was quite small, but
Suffering from
find
old people syndrome.
Inga probably does find a creepy desiccated body of an old man with a milky white eye and just.
Oh no! No!
What?
Oh no.
The Telltale Heart by Poe. One of my
Yeah.
favorites.
Oh, I thought you were actually going for a rose for Emily,
No.
which is actually more gross.
You find a single iron gray hair.
A single iron gray hair. That's the one. Oh.
One of the better sort of.
Well, anyway, she was short,
Okay.
so she probably wouldn't have like hidden anything like high
Right.
up, but instead somewhere low down.
That's fair enough, yes, but no, not now. In fairness, Inga, it would take you a long time to like rip up every floorboard and stuff like that. But like looking for obvious loose floorboards and stuff like that.
You don't
I
understand
have-
how angry she
I
is.
have 3 axes, and
Jeez.
so if I take one in each hand and hold one with my teeth and
Days
just go
pass.
to town,
Hold an axe with your teeth.
Lauren
It's like a
Zorro style.
I have great
deconstruction
respect
Cirque
for
du
Inga's
Soleil,
strength.
yeah, just
So when you start looking at this this teapot, Tani, and the herbs, the thing that you note first of all is that the tea which she used typically for the herbs that she typically used for her tea, that is definitely not the tea that is coming out of this pot, or at least the remnants of it. These are 2 different things for sure. The second thing is that as you're sort of using it, and I'm curious, what are you using to try to, other than scent, what are you using to determine anything about the one that's in the teapot? Because it will have a effect on what I tell you.
probably its degree of clarity. If it leaves any sheen, like an oily sort of sheen on a glass, the way that it spreads across like a stone, if there is a stone, its viscosity basically.
Okay.
I can imagine you could do this in the small courtyard situation at the
Sure,
back.
in the back.
'cause
Mhm.
There's like a little bit of, there's definitely stone out there. Or there might be running water for that matter.
Yep, and that was also largely untouched by the fire. So yes. So when you start to kind of, do exactly what you said, kind of do these various tests and things, what you notice is that there is indeed a sort of viscosity to it, a thicker viscosity than might have been the case with sort of so-called regular tea. It almost feels a little more, it's a little turgid, almost like mead, closer than tea. Now, part of that is because this is the dregs, so we're talking about there's not like a full amount of it left, but even so. And as you're sort of like, running your finger through it and looking at how it goes, you can sense, even sort of touching it, there is a little bit of a tingling sensation about your fingertips as you kind of put your fingertips into it. And as you kind of hold it up and even maybe touch it to your tongue is slightly numbed by this. Tani, not only do you think that this definitely had a powerful, probably sleeping effect, that it would be sort of a numbing agent that would cause someone to gradually go to sleep, but if it were consumed in enough quantity, now more quantity than what Kelda had, but if you were to give someone this tea over time, the experience would be to gradually numb and reduce the effect of pain on the body, so that you wouldn't notice if you were being harmed. This is, in short, something that might be used as a precursor for a much more deadly poison also. So it would have the effect of sleepiness for sure, but also be a setup for something else.
poppy juice, basically.
Yeah.
Huh.
Well. It would seem, Bolo, that when you first mentioned it, I almost discounted the possibility of someone getting both this and whatever has affected the queen from the same apothecary, but this tells me that it might actually be possible.
Wait, I mentioned that.
That's what I said, was river, not
Bowl River.
There's a river.
Frivolo.
There's a river called Bolo. In,
Yes,
sort of-
you look so similar to each other that I.
Basically the same height, easy to confuse.
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I guess they both have long hair.
Easily confused stone that way too.
Though everybody has long hair, so. Because this is Lord of the Rings, where everybody has long hair.
I didn't think Bolo had long hair. Does he?
I draw him with long hair, so.
Aw. Oh, aw, so cute!
Yeah.
It's Clovis. Oh my God, it's Clovis.
That was my teen angsty years.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. That was your Evanescence period.
Oof. Oof.
That was my loot phase.
My loot face.
My loot face. Amazing.
Face? Oh.
Every burglar goes through a loot phase.
I see what you did there.
I've got to go.
No.
You know.
Sorry, you were saying something actually serious.
That was the money joke right there.
Go on. Please.
Yeah, he was saying that he didn't at first he didn't give much credence to that idea, but now Thor Squint.
No, she did say that why not just kill her when they stole all of her work. And I wonder if that was actually the plan, but to kill her and make it seem natural.
Well, if she had had enough of this, she well could have slept all the way through.
But why didn't they just set the fire after wrecking the place?
Were they interrupted?
No, I don't think that. The way that... I think the fire might have been... I wonder if the fire was set because of us. Because of our interest in it. I mean...
If the purpose of all of this is effectively demoralization, then robbing her, attacking her home, could well serve to rally the people of this neighborhood rather than demoralize.
Yes. But... The way of it does seem... I mean, this is someone who remains steps ahead of us. They could have... I mean, Longo could have stolen... I mean, it's so strange because... He tried to steal the needle off of her person. Then he succeeded in stealing the needle from her home, but made it seem as if it were a different kind of attack, of burglary. And then having done that, set fire to the place in order, this is what Vig said, in order to get rid of any trace, right? Is that what it was, Arv? Like, how did Vig put it?
Yeah. I think the term was tie up loose ends and cover some tracks.
Tie up loose ends and cover some tracks. So, I mean...
They must have tried to hide something that we weren't able to find or learn about last time we were here.
Well, the first attack made us leave, right? That was the pretext for sending us out of town to go and seek out these bandits. And it seems like we were being used to wrap up a loose end because the orcs were set up to... I mean, it seemed like a setup to have us kill each other, wasn't it? So, it seems as if this Clovis, Longo, is always playing several moves at once, that we accomplish several goals at the same time. So, if the burglary of Kilda's was meant to both steal the needle and cast suspicion on a different group of burglars to make it seem like someone else was doing it, then I can only presume that setting this fire also accomplishes more than one goal. It's tying us up here, but it must also be distracting from something else. And then there's the case of the Queen. It's a tangled web. And it feels as if we could just find the right thread to pull on, that we might unravel it.
I also think that one of the reasons that he's able to stay one step ahead of us is that we are, in our way, very predictable.
Absolutely. We care about people. We're always going to try and stop harm from happening to them, and it's so much easier to destroy things than to build them. It strikes me as very unusual that all roads lead to Longo, and that Longo is a halfling. What business does a halfling have running a criminal enterprise in Dale? I mean, I don't know if I should apologize to you, Bolo, for these. If you
What
have
do
ambitions,
halflings know of crime anyway?
yeah,
I mean,
if you have
it's
ambitions to run a
like,
criminal enterprise,
you guys barely have the
All I
smarts to
drink
make
beer
some
and-
meat. I mean, Bull's like, I'm here. I'm right here.
I don't.
Just curious.
No, and it's only because of the noticeability. Everyone is talking about a halfling, or rather, there's mystery around Longo, but those who've interacted with him know he's a halfling. So, it's odd to me that we should be able to trace all roads to someone who seems so out of place here. That too feels like
A distraction.
distraction.
So
Maybe in the end it's Longo who's being set up.
if all roads lead there, we need to figure out who's drawing the map.
Double twist.
Right.
It's our
I mean,
smarts.
we've been given like so many false leads already. So,
Well,
eh?
so if we're, unless we have anything else, I think I should probably go and try to make contact with Brindle.
Yeah, and I think I need a bath. And Inge looks down on her, just like completely covered in soot, head to toe.
You guys look a mess.
I
Take a
suppose
rest.
we don't need to go with Kilda's body now if we know what was happening here. This is one thing that I don't think Longo expected us to have. We took this from the house before it could burn. We have this link now. I don't know, Tawny, if this is of use to you with the Queen. If she seemed to be suffering in a similar way or not, but I think, yes, Bolo should go speak to Brindle. Perhaps bring a sample of this to her?
Of the tea or tea
Yeah.
poison?
The poisonous residue, or I don't know, or a description of it or something.
Well, that's a good question. I don't think she would know necessarily. So maybe we could just save it until I find a reliable contact of some sort to bring it to.
River's just kind
All
of
right.
to Tawny as the guiding the guiding strategist of how to ask about poison without asking about poison.
Taking a small sample of it to her should be fine. This does deal directly with Kelda anyway.
You have any small glass vials or something like that that you can put it into?
I'm sure Tawny does, yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Not as many as Weller, but whatever.
Weller has nothing but vials.
Yeah, so he'll put a small bit of it, and he'll tilt it back and forth in the vial so that it's very clear how thick,
Yeah.
the thing is.
Yeah.
Make sure you make note of that.
Yes, of course. All right. Well, I will make arrangements to meet up later in the day, and then head back to the hideout. You know that I was in with Brindle
for the Broken Stone Irregulars. Now, where are you all deciding to meet later? Just so that I have a sense of it.
We don't even have a place in the city, do we? Yeah. We got into.
Like Inga probably knows a good place to stay.
Yeah, I mean, you could probably find different places. I mean, that are options. You certainly have the option of your workplace, Bolo. The Battered Mug probably has a place to it's a fine establishment.
I don't know if we should turn up at the Battered Mug. But
yeah, that's true. If you want to avoid, that's fair.
But I think that
so just pick a place that Inga knows, I guess. And...
I actually wonder about I don't know how long these kinds of preparations would take and stuff like that. But is there going to be a funeral for Kilda?
There would. You would assume there would be, although it probably would not happen for a couple of days, probably because because she's kind of the subject of she is evidence in a criminal investigation, so to speak. So there's part of that. And yeah. So, but probably it would be a couple of days, you would guess, River, before such a thing happened.
Okay, where is neutral ground for them to meet? Somewhere. I mean, I think Inga could probably choose like an inn or something.
I mean, it's about 11 o'clock right now, roughly speaking, in the morning there, and so you could 10:30, 11. So you could also meet, in the market, which is number 9 there on your map, I believe, and that in the middle of the day, unless you're going to be up until like 11 o'clock at night. If you expect that it'll take that long, then it would have to be presumably. Like as you say, an inn or a tavern, but otherwise you could just meet at that central location. It doesn't have to be a place you're staying. So
that's a good point, and I think can actually when is Bolo's shift over at the Battered Mug, or when does it begin?
I mean, Bolo's shift never really ends. Like it's really just sort of as long as they can keep him cooking actual food for the patrons, So yeah.
Well, if they were to meet, like just say somewhere in the market where there's some like plausible deniability for bumping into Bolo or something like that.
Okay, and our just so I'm clear on this, Inga, the River, and Tani are going to deal with the Queen while Bolo hands off to the Brindle Regulars, or is Tani going off to the Queen and Inga, the River, going somewhere different?
Inga would suggest going to the local bathhouse and while cleaning up. Talking to the other people there to see if we can get any information.
Yes. I think River has like a level of. We both have a level of exhaustion, don't we?
Yes.
So I think we need to do some rest or something to take care of that before. Or if Tanya, or we can have a honey cake. Do we have a honey cake break?
That's true.
Bathhouse, that would be.
How about some tea and honey cake, and then we just sleep for like 2 days straight?
Yeah.
How does that sound?
Because you'll need a long rest to restore exhaustion without that honey cake. So not a short rest, a long rest. So you would need, 6 to 8 hours basically of actual, not just like hanging out and talking, but literal rest, unless the honey cake helps out. So.
Good.
Okay.
Thanks. Okay.
So I think a bath, a honey cake, and getting the smoke and pitch and things out of their hair, I feel like all of that can be happening while Bolo is getting information from Brindle, and that way we're not out of sync.
Okay.
So the thing is, now that we are completely covered in soot, we do get an additional point to our armor class. Or so I've been told.
Really? Because I was going to say it actually deducts a point of dexterity from having to deal with the soot that is hardening on your body and making it difficult.
No, that's like an old joke about dwarves. Like when dwarves take a bath, they lose a point of armor class because...
Oh. I I
So much
I like the
fun.
idea that we are also like, losing stealth because we reek of smoke. It's
Yeah, right.
Exactly, yeah.
Minus 4 stealth roll.
And
Then
there
again,
is-
more difficult to see in the dark. So
That's fair enough. Okay.
And Tawny doesn't have much reason to go back to the Queen just yet.
yeah.
Okay. So then, all right. So then we're going to say that Tawny and Inga of the River are going to go find themselves a bathhouse / resting environment while we talk about Bolo next. Also a good place to reset briefly and say we're going to be going for about another half hour or so. So it's a good moment to say welcome everybody to day 9 of Adventures in Middle-earth, Erebor Adventures, the Silver Needle. You're watching the wonderful crew of Trendane, of Brad, of Terry, and of Amal, playing respectively Tawny, Bolo, Inga, and the River as they make their way through deep amounts of political intrigue and four-dimensional chess, which is 1,000,000,000% my jam, so I love every bit of this. I love open threads and people following them down the line. Please and give me all
threads.
that's good. Give me all the Jason Bourne all the time. I'm all about it. Let's talk a little bit about what happens with Bolo. Bolo, when you make your way down to back to the place of the Broken Stone Irregulars, I want to know how you are arriving at the hideout. Are you going to be kind of like great news, like very cheery about it? Are you sort of despondent? What sort of affect are you adopting as you walk up to the guards
kind of,
who are there?
I'm even keel about it because I am still affected by Kelda's passing, but once I get to the place, I flash assuming that I know that I recognize somebody. Do I recognize somebody who's on?
You haven't seen
guard?
anybody yet. So right now
and I know the place.
Yeah.
Okay, so I go back to that place. Is it? I forget what it is. Was it sort of like a basement-y, cellar-y?
Yes, in an alley, basically, which is there's a couple of barrels that are at the head of this alley, and when you walk between the barrels down the alley, you eventually find a couple of places, including one, which is I think the third to the left or something, that goes down, and that's the thing that leads into this little. It's a little strong to call it a catacomb, but into the area that leads to the basement where they are.
All right. Yeah. So I'll go down and just wait to be. Stopped or challenged.
Yep, I was going to say, when you go through the barrels and you come up to the place where you would normally take a left, you hear this this sort of whistle, and then a couple of cloaked figures emerge. Now, by the time that you're getting here, I would say that it's about midday, so it's there's not deep shadows. But you can see that they are emerging. One emerges from the little steps leading upward, and then one from behind a crate that was nearby in the alley. And they sort of come up to you, and you recognize them as two of the guards that actually originally led you and Brindle from the place where you first encountered her. And so they kind of nod and
So I flashed the little. I got like a coin or something, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I flashed the coin.
The BI, little interlocking BI thing, and
right.
And they go, all right, down you go then.
I need to speak to Brindle.
Down you go then.
All right.
And so,
how many are there?
Two.
Just two.
That you see.
Yeah. Okay. So I show them both the coin.
Okay.
And I'm very eager about it. I'm very very proud of flashing this coin.
They seem very unconcerned about your eagerness. Like, all right, there's like, yes, okay,
okay.
And
now that I'm head down, into the or tunnel or whatever it is, cellar.
Down the steps.
Anybody I happen to meet, I'm showing the coin to again.
Okay, so they're all sort of like
with the same sort of eagerness.
Couple of them nod, and like one you think rolls his eyes, and there's sort of as you're like showing these things, and then when you get down to the cellar proper, there's a fairly large room you may remember where there's a bunch of bunks around the outside, and little lanterns and things like that set up in crates of various types, like foot lockers almost, and so when you get into that area, you can see there's only a few people now. Presumably most of them are out doing various things. There's only one or two people who are sitting. One of them seems to be using sharpening his knife, apparently, sharpening his dagger. And then the other one might be asleep. You can't quite tell, but is just sort of lying quietly on their bedroll. And then you can see standing up is the character who, for some reason, I can't find the details of who the other guy was. Might have been Canner? I can't find the name of the guy who was the other one along with Brindle, and I'm trying to find. Well, we're gonna say Canner. We're gonna say actually Caddis for now. I think it might be Caddis, and if I'm wrong, then I'm wrong and whatever. So the you see this one, but the one Bolo, this is the one who was not a big fan of yours. You may remember.
Yeah.
And so. He sort of has his arms crossed when you come in, and so you made it back tail between your legs then, Bolo, huh?
I showed the coin, and I said, "No, actually, I've got some news for Brindle."
News?
Where is she? Where can I find her?
She's out. She should be coming back soon. Why?
Well, I've got to talk to her. Her ears only.
Why? Is there information you can't give her, Lieutenant?
Well, she asked me to come directly to her. I lie.
And he sort of looks at you and it narrows his eyes a little bit and says, you made quite an impression with her, Bolo, but the truth is, you don't know how long it'll be before she gets tired of you. Brindle, you can't necessarily believe that she's going to stick with what she wants, She changes, that one. Anytime that the advantage shifts, she shifts with it. Could be you might want to get more than just one single ally in this crew, if you understand what I mean.
Well, I do like making friends with people, but I think I have a special connection with Brindle. She likes me and I like her.
Brindle isn't like anyone. It's all about what she thinks she can get from them, you understand?
Well, you can't be like that with everybody, can you?
Depends. Around here, it's the best you can do. I'm just telling you to be careful. Because if she ever doesn't, well, things change, he says. And then you hear behind, from the hall upwards, "Aye, do they, my love? They change, do they, Caddis? Perhaps my interest in you might change too." And so Caddis sort of whirls to see that Brindle has emerged. And you, Bolo, you didn't see her either. She just kind of shows up out of the stairs almost.
Materializes.
Yeah. And he sort of, I didn't see you there. She's like, "That's obvious you didn't. Why don't you be heading out and think a little more about your interest in others' affairs?"
Beheading? Damn.
And there's what? What'd you say?
You said, "Why don't you be heading?" I'm like, "Ugh!"
Yes.
It's rough work.
Why don't you be heading out there? Beheading. You see what I'm saying? And he sort of says,
big act as she says this.
Right, exactly. And he opens his mouth to respond, and then she holds up a hand and she's like, "That's enough, Caddis. That's your chief problem. You get talking and you don't know when your mouth has to shut off. I'm giving you the chance now to do so. Go out now, and we'll speak about this later." And she kind of lowers her voice with the subtlety of a knife coming out of its sheath, and he kind of sort of leans back and grunts a little bit and then turns and leaves. And she watches him go, and then she shakes her head and she says, "That's the problem, Bolo. You spend time with enough thieves, you all start thinking like each other." And she looks down at you and says, "So, what'd you discover? Anything about our mutual friend?"
I like how Bolo is obliviously making enemies along the way. Anyway, I tell her, I went after his trail, and I think I found something. And I tell her, the bit of news I found, and that I insinuated myself into the battered mug and found a bit of news. it's a nice place, really. It just needs a bit of work. The battered mug. And
so when you say battered mug, she kind of like, her eyes widen a little bit, and she says, "The battered mug. She say it was a nice place."
Well, it will be once I get through with it.
And she shakes her head, and she's like, I didn't send you out there to start being flipping homes and saving inns, you realize, don't you? That place is known to be the head of the biggest amount of swill to be found in Dale. What exactly are you doing with it?
I didn't send you out there to gentrify the broken.
Listen, if I wanted you to be an A&E channel special on all, I would have told you that already.
Sit down,
Little
Gordon
pockets
Ramsay.
of niceness where Bolo was in a city.
Look, Hell's Kitchen is one thing. But no, but she says, what are you doing out there with that?
Yeah. Well, I was just trying to find a bit of news about Longo. Come at it from a different angle, so to speak. And I think I found his place, but I found something more interesting that you might find of interest as well. And I go on to tell her about how there was a commotion. I saw some smoke rise and find what was happening, and sure enough, the Heroes of Dale were there. And as I mentioned, I came into town with them. I delivered a note for them, and
I remember.
I was curious.
I remember.
And they're onto something. They knew knew the seamstress Kelda. You may know her.
Aye.
She's unfortunately passed. I go on to describe what I know of the fire, and just so I know, she wasn't attacked directly. Did she die of smoke inhalation?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So that's the way I pitch it. Tell Brindle. And I say afterwards, I got to talking with the heroes a bit, and there's something curious going on with Kelda. I described the theft of her needle, and we think there might have been some sort of poison applied to her, and I'm just, thinking that Longo might be involved. Sorry, Amal, go ahead.
Quick question. I'm wondering if I can retroactively suggest that River suggests to Bolo that he ask something in particular of Brindle. It was in line with what we were talking about. Basically, River didn't want to tell the guards the names Casper and Swain, but I think she'd quite like Brindle to know those names.
I think Brindle, that's fine. I think Brindle would know that Bolo would know those names from you having talked about it. So I think that's
exactly
okay
what I'm saying. Like,
yeah, that's okay for Bolo to reveal it if he wishes. That's fine, yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
Exactly.
That's okay.
Reveal what? I'm sorry. The names of the
reveal royalty. No.
That's
Will.
That's Rabar.
The people who set the fire were named Casper and Swain, but we don't know anything else about them. We don't know what they look like and stuff like that. And I think River would have wanted Bolo specifically to mention that so that we could learn something about them.
I think while we were talking, you would have mentioned that anyway. So I do mention that, and I say they gave me this, and I take out the little vial. They suspect there might be the poison on it, and so I'm wondering if you know of Longo's associates. Does he keep an apothecary, a herbalist, someone, a poison master of some sort, who might have been involved in this? And Brindle, I think we might have an opportunity here. We might be able to set the Heroes of Dale against Longo if we play this right.
So she kind of reaches out for the vial.
Yeah.
So assuming do you give it to her?
Yeah.
So she kind of looks both directions. Do I have that? No, I don't have one that fits. But she kind of looks at it, and you see her face as you've been talking, Bolo. Her face has gotten more and more sort of grim, and she usually has this kind of semi-smirk on her face, but none of that is the case as she's looking at this stuff, and then she shakes her head and she hands it back, and she says, "There's two kinds of thieves that I've found since I've been working here. One is the kind that cuts a purse, takes a coin, picks a pocket, does all that because it's the need of survival. The fine lords and ladies of Dale don't pay attention to those that don't cross their notice. So, while we're not crossing their notice, we're taking something from them. That's a very different thing from the ones that start slitting throats, choking people, cutting their legs out from under them so that they can steal what they need from them in peace. I don't hold with the second sort. First, because it's bad for business. And second," and she kind of pauses, "because there's a line that some of us won't cross. That's a line that Longo crosses all the time. I already told you before you left how he's been trying to stick his business with our affairs regarding the things around him. So, leaving tokens that are supposed to be ours, putting the blame for various things he's doing on us. He's not just moving in, he's trying to take us out as he does so. So I'm not surprised then that he's working with poisons. What I am surprised about, though," and she kind of looks several times, again at this vial, sort of looking it up and down, she says, "I don't understand the play. What is it about Kelda? Why did she care so much? Why did he care so much about her? Why bring us into it? Why poison her? All of this takes a lot of planning and time. Sure, Longo's got some of that to spare, but you'd think he'd be doing it on something that matters more." And
That's my thought exactly. Yeah. It's a curious thing. I can't figure out myself why she would be involved.
And she looks at you and she says, "Come with me." And she takes the vial and she kind of slides it into a pocket on the inside of her cloak. And with a swirl of her cloak, she turns and heads up the stairs away out of the basement.
All right, I follow her.
She makes her way out of the place entirely, nodding. The guards, you can see that there are one or two guards that she nods to, but when she gets outside, she kind of looks up and then nods once, even though you don't see anyone, but that's very typical for the Broken Stone Irregulars.
Yeah.
And then she sets off down the street, and she goes at a pretty fast pace, Bolos. You've actually got to, like, kind of book it to keep up.
Hop, skip
yeah, because she doesn't say anything to you. And eventually she brings you all the way through and over until you're over here. Excuse me, right up against the eastern wall here of Dale. And in this place, there is a small little, out of all of Brokenstone, this area begins to get a little bit more open for a while. So at first you think you're moving out of Brokenstone. But then you come to this space near the wall where the walls loom up, and there are these tiny little houses that seem to be there, and little alleyways. And there's one small little alleyway between two, like, smallish houses that are back up against the wall. And she goes through that alley, and just as you walk into it, she turns and she puts her finger to her lips and she looks down at you and says, "Now you listen to me, Bolo. Whatever you might have heard about the way to conduct yourself here, I need you to have your best face on. This person we're seeing isn't someone I particularly care for, but it's a place that we're going to need to know if we're to find out more details about this. Basically, let me do most of the talking, all right?"
All right, fair enough.
So she then turns and walks down, and after about probably just maybe 30 seconds or so, it's not a very long alleyway, she gets to the bottom and is facing what looks like just a brick wall. Like, it looks like the back wall of Dale. And she stares up at it, and she stares at it for what looks like a good minute. And after a moment, Bolo, you're probably like, "What are you doing?" And then she reaches up and like that. And there's a moment's pause, and then you see and an outline appears jaggedly around some of the bricks in the back. And this
I just
door.
want to make a note that I'm watching very carefully where she's, the pattern that she's using and where she's knocking.
Yes. Okay. So you do that, and the door kind of jaggedly with the jagged around the brick edges, if you follow what I mean, like opens like this, and you realize that it's actually not the back wall of Dale. It is a false front in front of that wall, and there are a few stairs leading downwards, and standing at the top of the stairs is this very sleek-looking black cat with intense green eyes that's just staring at you. And it just sort of stares at you and then and turns and like slither and almost slithers, but like slides down the stairs quickly
Slinks.
and into the shadows. Slinks, yes. And as if this is perfectly normal, Brindle says, "All right, watch yourself in here," and then walks down the stairs. So assuming you follow her.
I do, and I'm like listening carefully, looking carefully, because I'm not sure what's going on. I'm a little nervous.
Yeah, there's plenty to see and hear. Down in this place, you hear first this bubbling, and there are scents and smells. I'm trying to think of a good out-of-game comparison. Imagine if you combined a bakery with a Yankee Candle with the inside of a kitchen cooking stew. And that's basically what you would get. This bizarre, I know that this does not exist as a word, I'm making it one, cacophony of smells, okay? That just sort of all intersect and impact with each other. And as you get sort of down the stairs a little bit further, you see that this opens up into a, not a huge shop, but a room which has every conceivable kind of bubbling vial, and like you see little pipettes here and there on shelves. There are these little things like tubes like kind of sliding around, and actually one big tube, there's a little archway that you pass through to go into this room, and there's one tube like over your head, Bolo, that kind of extends from the left to the right over your head. So there's just all kinds of things everywhere, and there's one counter that you can see towards the back, and there's a little door back there, which has got to be right up against the wall, because there's not that much room for there to be a false front against the wall of Dale. So this is like must be right against the actual foundations of the city. And sitting on the counter is this same black cat. And Brindle comes in front of the black cat, is standing in front of the counter and stops. And then she says, "All right, come out, you old witch. There's no reason for you to be waiting around here. I understand what you're doing." And there's a pause, and then there is a sound of a shuffling from the back room. And coming out from the back room, you see a incredibly bent-over, old-looking woman with wispy white hair that trails down, and she seems like she's almost bent double, although as she comes out, she kind of straightens a little bit. But she's still bent over with, and she looks for all the world like a out of the fairy tales witch textbook, the crone nose with the wart and the whole business, right? Looking very much like you would have seen out of something like that, out of a fairy tale. And the old woman comes up behind the counter and then reaches up a hand and strokes the back of the black cat, which kind of arches its back a little bit. And the old woman says, "So you've made your way back. I thought you said you wouldn't be coming back here anymore, Brindle. Didn't have what I wanted, you said. Not really looking for my concoctions, I thought." And Brindle has her arms folded and says, "I'm still not coming here to buy anything from you. I'm looking for information." "Information?" "Information? Well, I don't know as old Calla can provide you that. My job's to make these things, pretty little potions, not to give information. I'm not an information broker. You must have taken a wrong turn now, Brindle." And the cat purring. And Brindle shakes her head, looks frustrated, if you had to guess. And for the first time, the old woman, Kala, notices you, Bolo, apparently. And you've brought a friend, too, a halfling, no less. Oh, very interesting. All sorts of halflings in Dale these days, yes. You, dear, perhaps you're looking for something that could help you. Perhaps a love potion. Perhaps a potion of sleep or growth. Perhaps you're looking for the other sorts of things. And she sort of smiles at you. You see her kind of crooked teeth. Also, I think I heard a knock on the door. Bear with me. Yes? Hi. Okay, what?
Everybody wave.
I don't know if anyone heard that.
No,
not really.
She said, did you know that Mount Kilimanjaro that Kilim means mount, so that when you say Mount Kilimanjaro, you're really saying Mount Jaro. She's like, I wanted to let you know that because she just finished her geography lesson with her mom. I was like, thank you, my love, for letting me know. I'm now. The more you know. Needed that rainbow with the star. The more you know.
It's like saying the Sahara Desert.
Right, because it's desert, yeah.
Shiitake mushroom.
Right.
Or kielbasa sausage.
Exactly, or Republican death cult. But anyway, sorry. Woo,
Pew pew pew.
wow. Anyway, so she says, looking down at you, says, so perhaps I could interest you in something. You don't want to spend time with Brindle here. She'll just have you wandering around Dale and stealing money from the lords and ladies. So much more productive things you could do with your use of time. And the cat, as she purrs, you notice something odd, Bolo, which is that every time she moves, the cat moves with her. Like the head, like as she moves down, the cat's head moves with her. That sort of thing. It seems almost synchronized to her. And Brindle sort of puts out her arm on your shoulder, Bolo, and she says, "He's with me, Kala. So you just take it easy there, love." And Kala sort of, I'd like him to speak for himself, you don't mind. And stares at you, Bolo.
Should I make us some tea? We'll be here for a little while.
Tea? I like a certain kind of tea, but you might find the wrong herbs for something like that, laddie. And she kind of...
I've brought my own.
Oh! Now, see, Brindle, you've been holding out on me, spending all your time with the cut purses and not enough with the... And she looks at you. The ones who have an appreciation for the finer things. Sure, dearie, make your tea. There's an open flame right over there. And indeed, there's a place where a little mini cauldron is kind of, bubbling on one of those steel crossbars, basically over the top, or iron, I should say, crossbars. So you could actually slide it across and sort of slide you could put your you could put like the tea into like this kettle. There's an open kettle there. And she says, that one's fine. It's got some water. Nothing in it. Don't worry, Brindle. Because she can already see that Brindle is like glaring at her. And she's like, far too suspicious. So you start making the tea.
I'll head that way, but I'll wink at Brindle as I go. And I'll busy myself so that she doesn't have a chance to talk to me very much and let Brindle do her thing.
Okay. So she, you look over, but I assume you're still watching, right? As you're doing this, okay. So you can see that she takes out the vial, Brindle does, from the inside of her cloak, and she says, I need you to see about this. I don't suppose this is one of your types, is it? And she hands it over to the old woman, who kind of picks it up and looks at it with a practiced eye. And then she literally holds it under the cat's nose. And the nose, sniffs at it. And then she holds it back up again, and I know what it is, but it's not one of mine. Of course, if it were one of mine, I wouldn't be inclined to tell you, would I, dearie? It's bad for business, and I know that you and I disagree on how business ought to be run, eh? And Brindle, whose back is continuing to get straighter and more rigid as this conversation is continuing, says, I don't need more of your riddles. If you know what it is, then you tell me. Oh, and I'll just do that for you, will I, Brindle, because of your kindness to an old lady. What's it worth to me?
I'll use this moment to bring some tea over.
Okay.
And hand him around.
You can see that Brindle's jaw is set like she's gritting her teeth. And the old woman takes the tea and says, ah, yes, and looks at it and inhales deeply. I love it. Yes, indeed. Well brewed, I think. And hands it over the little mug, puts underneath the nose of her cat again. And so the cat, just takes a couple of little sips of it and then purrs. And so she takes the mug. All right, then. And she begins to drink a little bit and, yes, you got potential, you do. Make sure you come back here without your friend. She kind of waves dismissively at Brindle. And we'll take you under my wing, I will. You can learn about all the things that pulse through the veins of the people of Dale. And it's not just blood, dearie, not all the time, anyway. And Brindle says, he's not working for you, he works for me. He's the one that brought me the vial. And I'm not going to be put off again, Calla. If you know what's going on here, you're going to tell me. Or what? Calla says. And the cat goes, hisses a little bit. And Brindle sort of just, her eyes flicker down to the cat. Make an insight check for me, please, Bolo.
Okay.
Roll high.
High insight. Welp.
Not what I said.
You're like,
I'm like,
yeah, exactly. It's like Baby Yoda in that episode of The Mandalorian where you're just sipping the tea as they're beating the hell out of each other. That's basically it. So
these are old friends, and they're just
yeah, it's good to see people get together again. Yeah, it's
they're probably family. This is nice.
It's the insight of Olaf from Frozen. No, you can tell that Brindle is even without a good insight check, you can tell that Brindle is definitely not happy. And there's a moment that passes, and Brindle says, I don't want to have to come back here, old lady, later on, and put you out of business for good. And Calla sort of, her cackling sort of ceases, and she says, I understand you think you run Brokenstone, dear, but that ain't been the case now for a while. You're acting like someone who's losing their territory, and love, that's 'cause you is losing your territory. Longo's gonna put you out of business, and when he does, I don't want to be the only one left standing. And Brindle sort of lowers her head close, and the cat, you can hear the hiss getting louder from the cat. She lowers her head and she says, you won't have the opportunity to do so. Either you tell me what I want to know, Calla, or I make sure that you get drowned in your own poisons. You know what you sell here. You sell death stoppered in a vial. And I don't need to tell you what happens if people find out about it beyond Brokenstone. So stop playing hard to get, love. I've had enough. And this time, you can hear the very slightest sound of a knife being loosened from a sheath below. There is lightning crackling between the two women, just very,
Okay.
And so you can jump in if you want or not. I'm just letting you know that's the current environment.
To diffuse the tension a bit, I'm just gonna say, I've always found that tea first, discussion second. Please. I just motion and I sip a little bit. We'll all feel much better if we just have a little bit of tea.
They all three, including the cat, slowly stare at you, like over this way, and then kind of lean back a little bit. And Kala says, "All right. Say that I happen to know about this. Say that I can tell you what it's for. Other than threats, what's it worth to you if I tell you?" And Brindle kind of, her jaw sets, glances down at you for a minute, Bolo.
Do I get the impression she's asking for,
Yeah, for your feed, for your input.
Well, I think it would... Gosh, I don't know enough about her.
Yeah, you're working in the dark here for sure.
Yeah.
But you do know something about Brindle, so...
Right. Well, I can't imagine that you would want Longo long term. Eventually, he's going to come to you. So it seems to me like you might want to help Brindle to help secure this city. That'll work out for the best for everyone, I think.
Make a persuasion check for me, please, Bolo. Time to snap the camera.
Oh.
The 19. You may not be able to know what they're thinking, but you can change their bit. So there's a moment where Kala and the cat are both sort of looking at you, and then the cat starts purring again, and Kala sort of leans back and says, "Ah, there, you see, Brindle. Once in a while you bring someone with you who's got much more sense than you, dearie. So," and she looks at you, Bolo, "I think there's something to what you say. Because this isn't mine, as I say. And I don't want people passing around concoctions that ain't mine. It's bad for business, as I said." And she pauses. "I heard about this perhaps 3-4 days ago. That someone's been bringing in things from the outside, including this. You can't get this from any of the local greenery here. You can't get this, in fact, from a lot of places. This," and she holds up the vial, "comes from north. Far north. Into the waste, you understand me? It comes from there. And I heard rumors that someone's been bringing some of this into Dale for reasons no one knows. I know that Longo's been using it. About a week ago, a couple of his men come by. They say, 'Kala, you ought to be working for us. You ought to be doing what you can to help the new boss of Brockenstone, and Dale himself, if you please, come in. If you can help him, he'll help you.' Big men they were. And I looked at them and said, 'Kala's always happy to help those who've got the coin.' They says, 'It's not about payment. It's about the person you're serving.' Well, I looked up at them and I says, 'You tell your boss Longo that Kala will decide who she serves. And as soon as she's done talking to that person,' and she looks down at the cat and then at herself and says to you, continuing the story, 'as soon as she finds that person, she'll let him know. In the meantime, you tell him that Kala don't work for anyone but herself right now, and he can come himself if he wants to make a purchase.' They look at me. They bring their hand down to their sword hilts, and then they turned and walked away. That was a week ago, like I say. And since then, I haven't had my usual customers in. Somehow the word's gotten out that I'm not to be dealt with. Until you showed up, Brindle dear." And Brindle says, "It's good to know that you finally decided you'd do something once your own market dried up, you old crone." And Kala sort of, always the polite one. And she hands the vial over to you, Bolo, and she says, "If you want the details of where this is found, then you're going to need to go find him yourself. because Longo's the only one I know using stuff like this. Poison, or in this case, some kind of, and she looks up, probably athelweed, maybe. But athelweed, like I say, comes from the north, and it's not easy to store nor carry. Use this athelweed, though, and you can put anything you like into their drinks, and they'll never know it or feel it. Just sleep sweet for the rest of time, dearie. And Brindle says, can you make an antidote? Calla sort of, raises her head and looks at her and says, I can do anything with any kind of herbs and liquids, if I've got a big enough sample and reason to do it. And Brindle nods and looks down at you, Bolo, and says, all right. We'll be back then. And when we do, we'll be asking for an antidote here. Brindle, can I leave this vial with her? She's got to do her experiments on it, I expect. And Calla nods, a big smile with crooked teeth.
Yeah. Yeah. She can keep that.
And Calla says, well, I assume you must be getting on. I am so glad you dropped by today. Make sure you come back when you can. Don't be a stranger. Especially you, dearie. And she points at you, Bolo. Some more of that tea would not go amiss. And I could add something to give it a bit of spice,
I was actually
too.
going to, before she said that, get a little sampling of tea for enough for a couple of cups. And then put it in a small cloth bag for her and hand it over. Here's some until I come visit again.
Oh, very nice of you. Even free gifts. Look. And she hands it over, and the cat sort of sniffs it and then picks it up in its teeth and jumps down the counter and goes back into the room behind the counter.
Okay.
And she smiles at you again with her crooked teeth and says, all right then. Good luck to you. And be careful of the shadows. If you spend time with Brindle, they have a way of finding you. And Brindle, with a glare, turns and says, come on, and heads out of the shop below.
I'll follow her.
While this is all happening, Tani and Inga and the river are enjoying themselves by cleaning up and by getting, somewhat less exhausted and so forth. Enjoying being at least resting, let's put it that way. Enough to clear that level of exhaustion as we talked about before. But as you're all there doing all of this various stuff, there comes a knock on the door of the bathhouse. And Tani, I would say that if you're already maybe cleaned up and everything, you might at this point, be...
Wasn't dirty.
Or yeah, so you were just kind of there, right, sort of on the outside, while Inga and the river were there in the bathhouse. So there comes a knock on the door that leads to this overall place. What was that?
Oh, me rolling my hit die.
Oh, okay. All right, right.
Yeah, should we recover?
You could do that, sure. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Just,
using one of the hit dice, you could do that for sure.
Is this also actually? Sorry, I'm wondering if I should do the staunching song here or not.
You could. I mean, this would bring you to 48 out of 48, Inga, I think, because you were only at 46 out of 48.
Now I'm full. I was just down 2 hit points.
Right.
Yeah. Actually, no. I'm only. Yeah.
I'm not sure it's worth it, River, but
I'll just roll the one because I'm at 44 out of 50. So is it just hit dice? I just roll and we'll roll one.
You're gonna roll one die, yes, of what you would normally roll for your hit dice. 6. All right. So make sure you mark down that you've used one of your hit dice, but you've also gotten up to full. Okay. And there is a knock at the door on the outside, Tani, and doof, 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 doof. And so, assuming you answer it, you can see that it is the guard that you originally had seen back at the back of the house, back at Kelda's house. But the guard this time is accompanied by Cardis, who is the captain of the guard in Dale. And Cardis sort of nods and says, I'm sorry for bothering you, Thane, but there's something which must be discussed.
Solely with me, or?
Well, with all of you, I suppose. And he sort of looks around, just outside where you are. There's a couple people passing by, but no one seems to be paying attention very much, so he lowers his voice and he says, we've done a little bit of looking into what you found, the body of the woman Kelda, the seamstress.
Mm-hmm.
One of the healers has seen her too. The poison, and he sort of says to the guard, why don't you step away for a moment, lad? And the guard just seems a little bit taken aback, but, steps away. And Cardis says, we've gotten word of what's been happening to Queen Una. Kelda, she definitely died of smoke inhalation for sure. But there was a residue on her tongue. It was a kind of poison, and it was the same one being used on the Queen. And that is where we are going to bring our session to a close for today. So,
we totally have the sample that Tawny can use to make an antidote, because it is the same thing.
Maybe.
So, okay.
Maybe. Although this is a residue on this, to be fair, this is what they found in Kelda. So you don't know. Remember, there's two substances. One that is the sort of numbing agent, which is what Bolo is dealing with and all that, and then with the vial that he has. And then there's this other, which is the actual poison that was used on the Queen. The poison they found in Kelda was just a tiny tip, a little bit of this poison that was used on the Queen. So may or may not be the same thing.
Poison for the Queen. The Queen's poison.
The Queen's poison.
Supposed to kill the Queen.
Well, I mean, Tawny already figured that part out, right? So.
Yeah.
But good stuff today, everybody, as the intrigue deepens, and we get to see people moving in different directions here. And we've only got we started with basically 3 and 1, and so we ended, I guess, with 3 and 1. But we're getting closer to getting everyone together at the same time. So, but it was a lot of fun to watch this play out. I will start as usual on the bottom of the column. Mal, there was some really good stuff, I thought, with the conversations, and there was a fair bit. There wasn't a lot of movement in this session, but there was a lot of talking and figuring things out because, as you pointed out several times, Longo seems to have been a couple of steps ahead, and you're all trying to avoid that. So I thought it was interesting to see that play out, and the way that you were affected by Kelda's death seems very appropriate to me. How did you feel about today? Where will the lovely folks see you next?
I super loved it. I thought it was delightful. And I really love talkie sessions. I mean, as Louis Pasteur says, tout est poison, rien n'est poison, tout est dans la dose, and stuff like that. So all is poison, nothing is poison, everything is in the dose. And similarly to poison, enjoyment of different sessions is definitely cool. So I love the variety of having. I mean, across the adventure so far, we've had battle heavy ones and sneaky heavy ones and talky heavy ones, and I love the leaven basically of a talk forward sort of in the wake of grief situation. And I really loved just everyone getting back together and kind of pulling together the threads that they've found. I think is really cool. I love watching Bolo so much. I just I feel it's so appropriate to someone from the Shire to specifically just disarm by their actual total guilelessness in so many ways. I think it's fantastic, and I love to see it. I just love to see it. So yeah, I really enjoyed that. I loved Tawny and Inga, just in terms of reacting to this really upsetting thing and everything. I just really loved it. Such a good game. I love the game. Anyway, so where can people find me? I'm in fact later tonight at there's a broadcast for the. Actually, wait, can I talk about this? I can't remember.
Sure you can.
A thing. There's a Brooklyn Public Library event that is being broadcast this evening. And Max and I will be on it for reasons. So I don't know how much more of that I can say, but it will be cool probably. And if you all want to tune in to that, that would be interesting.
And when was that, Amal?
Well, it's a good question. We're up at like 7:28. We're reading a page from Time War, but the actual itinerary, I think it's at 7. Yes, 7 o'clock. So
I missed that. Is that tonight?
Yes, 7 o'clock
Okay.
tonight.
Okay.
And in Eastern time, and I will find the public link for that at some point. But what else? Yes, besides that, gosh, I was just at a con this weekend at FireCon, and so that was really cool. But what am I doing next?
I just put a link for this, by the way, in chat. It's because, and I think this can be announced because it's been announced publicly. So
oh, it has. They didn't tell us it was
6-book shortlist for the 2020 Brooklyn Public Library Literary Prize. Stop me if you're surprised that this book is up for an award. The shortlist nominees are Saeed Jones, Ian Urbina, Ruha Benjamin, Rivers Solomon, Ocean Vuong, Amal Amatar, and Max Gladstone. And they'll be reading from their works Tuesday, October 20th at 7 p.m. The virtual program is open to the public. And Linda Johnson says, from speculative fiction to reportage, each of the shortlist titles our librarians have chosen is unflinchingly brave. These books represent what readers are craving in 2020 to better understand how our world has come to be so that we might imagine it differently. And I want you all to know that Amal is part of a daring group of storytellers, poets, and journalists who transport readers across the globe. So I want you all to know that. But anyway, yeah, this looks very public. And of course, anything that involves the New York Public Library getting positive things is good, regardless. So anyway.
I'm so glad, because the thing was they told us not to announce it, but then they didn't tell us when they were announcing it. So I...
Yeah, this came out Wednesday the 14th, and it said Meet the Authors virtual event October 20th. So yeah.
Awesome. Very cool. So yeah, so that's a thing. And besides that, I'm just here trying to make my office prettier and prettier, and I'll be back here again next time we stream. And otherwise, you can find me on Twitter for my sins at Tithenai, Tithenai. I am back from hiatus, but kind of want to immediately dive back into hiatus, so I don't know, we'll see. But so definitely sign up for my newsletter, amal.substack.com, where I will try to center my attention. Also, if you're into baseball, which I am, you should totally support the Spies, and that's all I'm saying. All right. Yeah.
Always a pleasure, Amal. Thank you. Also a pleasure to have Terry with us. Terry, I loved, at one point I was really cracking up about the way that Inga, as usual, can sort of cut straight to the point where she's just like, all right, so I think what we need to do is go to Longo and kick his ass and crush him and like destroy him and like, and I was just like, everyone's like, well, 12th dimensional chess, and she's just like, or we could just go directly to him and just kick his ass. Like he's right there. That was cracking me up. Hey, what's up, Coven? Yeah, sadly, but I'm going to be over at GOG in a bit. But it was a lot of fun to watch that play out. And, I also liked just a little subtle moment of where the River and Inga hugged each other. And there was that moment where you said, first she doesn't do it, she kind of resists it. And then she kind of was all very nice and seemed very Inga appropriate, I think, in terms of.
It wasn't really about resisting and more like,
No, exactly.
like her not really wanting to realize what's actually happening.
Yeah, of course, yeah. But that moment of recognition and then was really nice. So, so good stuff, and I was very pleased to see that. How'd you feel about today? Where will the lovely folks see you next?
Well, I mean, finally I got to live my ultimate dream of, at least virtually, going to a bathhouse.
Yeah.
It's like the dream. Like one day I'm gonna go to Japan and visit an actual onsen. That's if they let me in, because I am tattooed and they have a thing about tattooed people in onsen in Japan. So yeah, because having tattoos is like a mafia thing over there. So.
Okay. Well, that's okay because your mafia membership makes that all right? Like I mean.
Oh yeah, like I have my mafia member card always with me.
like Bolo with his coin. You're just like, hey, look, I'm in the
There's a little
mafia.
coin.
Look, here's my Godfather soundtrack. It's right here.
Yes. Oof. But yeah, no, this was fun as always. I don't know when people are gonna see me next. When is the next? Like I'm assuming next time it's gonna be a drawing stream, right?
Probably it'll be. Yeah, my guess is it'll be a couple of weeks. If I had to guess, I got to work this out with the crew, but I would guess that we would be on the 10th and the 24th is my guess. Tuesday the 10th, Tuesday the 24th for AIME, so that you and I would be here for. No, yeah. I have to think about it. I don't know. I have to figure it out. I don't know yet. But, yeah, probably the 3rd or the 10th would be the day that you and I are doing our drawing. So, one of those 2 days.
But, yeah, since, like, people were talking about anime in the chat, because we are gonna do a ninja-based book next,
Yes.
which I forgot the name. So, yeah, all can
Assassin,
expect me to
I
go full Naruto on this one. So,
Outstanding.
Yeah.
Outstanding.
Yes. So, yeah. That's me. Other than that, people can find me on Twitter and on Instagram at TariTunes. So, please give a follow. It would be nice. And, yeah. That's me.
Thank you, Terry. Always a great pleasure. Also, always a great pleasure to have Brad with us, who has completely inhabited the life and times and existence of Bolo in a very, very powerful way, and I think everyone really buys into it. And yeah, I mean, Bolo, I don't know that we originally knew that Bolo was going to get this invested in like this much intrigue this quickly, but it seems to fit. And I was having a blast. I don't know about you, but I was having a blast of this visiting this sketchy apothecary with the black cat and seeing how you were going to react to that as sort of, again, like the Shire presence. But see, without going into story aspects or whatever else, the idea that it isn't just like you're an innocent, oh, look at everything, it's not like that, but there is this sense of still, look, let's just all try to get along here and do things so that we don't, lowering the stakes, I guess, which I thought was a lot of
disarming
fun.
technique.
Yeah, which I thought was a lot of fun. How did you feel about today's session? Where will the fine folks see you next?
Yeah, it was very emotional to begin with, and sort of dealing with the aftermath of Galda. But yeah, it was a lot of fun touching base with Brindle and like just seeing how that develops over time, and then visiting the witch. Yeah, the witch was fun and creepy. It'll be interesting to follow that up and see where everything is headed. Yeah, exactly. And no big plans for me coming up. I still have not heard about the podcast, but I will mention that once I get news when that's coming out. And otherwise, my most frequented social media is Twitter. You can find me at bbullier there, BBEAULIEU. And otherwise, great session. Thanks.
Good stuff. Thank you, Brad, as always. And last but certainly not least, Tren, we did get a chance this time to see a little more of Tani's work, especially when it came to identifying the poison, figuring out what was necessary for the poison, and, kind of recognizing that there's multiple levels maybe to the way the poisoning was done and what that all means, and, dealing with the guards and all that stuff. So I felt like Tani had a lot of different aspects that played into the medicinal checks and things like that of his character, and wanting to figure out how all of these things tie together. The whole group was doing a lot of that, about like determined not to get caught off guard again. And so everyone's like, wait, think about all this. There's a one moment where Amal, where you did the check on the insight check on the guard. You're like, why are you asking me about this fire? I'm like, well, it's a fire. It's like, no, but I want to know, which is very appropriate, very reasonable. So
I will say that like the reason for that is she didn't think that it was someone in disguise. She was like, well, I don't know, has Longo turned any of the guards?
Exactly. No, of course, I got that. Yeah, no, it was very, very cool. So Tren, yeah, it seems like you got a chance to be a part of that mix, especially on the poison side. How did you, figuring out the poison side, how did you feel about today? Where will the lovely folks see you next?
I was absolutely delighted to poison the queen. I mean,
so it's the, exactly.
No, now, today it felt very, I don't want to say sedate, but it was a very even-keeled sort of and that there wasn't this running intensity of, just crazy stuff. It was very, very steady, and I enjoyed it a great deal, as I usually do. And of course, just, I know we've all said it, and I'm going to say it again, because watching Bolo is just fantastic. I absolutely love it's just great. I think for me, because there are still a lot of ways that we see that he is still not quite a part of the group. I mean, he is, but he's not. And I think that was most demonstrated today in the reactions from each person on seeing what happened with Kelvin, because he didn't know her like the rest of us did. And so there's no way he could have the kind of reaction that the rest of us were having. I mean, Tawny was still being very clinical in a lot of ways, just because he's thinking, I don't have the luxury of reacting badly to this right now. I will deal with my grief and everything later on. I've got higher priorities at this point. Very much the way doctors. But yeah, and then he comes walking in, and it's like, even after finding out what's going on, it just doesn't have the same knife thrust for him that it does with everybody else. I really like that a lot. And the way that and I know that at some point it's going to be a situation where it does really mean something to him. And there was actually an episode of Stargate SG-1 I was watching last night where Vala is like, she's crying. She's like, I can't do this. And he's like, the hardest part of this job is not putting your own life on the line, is watching your friends take chances with theirs and not being able to do anything about it. Well, now you're one of us. And I'm like, oh God, okay. That's good. So where will people see me next? Not this Saturday, but next Saturday on Infinity and Beyond.
Friday night, actually.
Totally different T-shirt, which I would like to note that Tali was wearing her shirt and
yes.
I'm wearing mine. And
under my hoodie because it's cold. So
yeah. But where I will be playing a dead guy, sort of. But there seems to be something. I will let slip this much of a tease that I will be, let's say perhaps wearing some extra bits of clothing that may cause, the clothing won't really cause profuse sweating, but there will be profuse sweating because of the fact that I'm going to be doing something very uncomfortable, which is having this, because my character's dead, so I'm going to take the one chip challenge while we're on the show. And
what are you showing me? What is this one chip challenge?
This is basically, imagine a Dorito that is powdered in Carolina Reaper.
Trent, if you do something that causes you to therefore go to the hospital and miss the session, I will never forgive you. I don't care about what happens to you personally. You as a player will then have been lost to us. Don't do something dumb, all right? Like,
this isn't dumb. This isn't like eating $11 worth of Taco Bell nachos in one sitting. Okay.
I'm talking about your judgment. All right, you do what you need to do. You just be careful, and because if you're like, sorry guys, I got to leave after a half hour. The rest of
it's probably going to be like much. I'll be back, and then that's it for
no. Anyway.
So at what time exactly is that stream?
Yeah, it's like, let me find that out.
It's a long one. So
it's going to be Friday night, Friday night, the 30th and 31st. For those who don't know who's watching, this is going to be the conclusion of the Curse of Strahd campaign where they challenge Strahd himself. It starts at 7 p.m. Eastern on Friday the 30th, and it will go till probably about 2 in the morning on Saturday the 31st. We are ending Curse of Strahd, the vampire-driven module, on Halloween, and I am insanely smug about it. So
wait. What time do you start?
We start at 7 p.m. Eastern.
Yeah, okay, no, that's
it's
like
an ungodly hour for you.
for me, but you stop at 2 a.m.
2 a.m.
Right?
Yep.
So that is. What is that for me?
Isn't it like 7 or 8 for you? Or 9? It should be about 8. Shouldn't it be 8 for you? Isn't it about 6 hours ahead?
Yeah, it's literally 6 hours ahead.
So 8 a.m. then.
Okay.
You could do that. It'll be fine. You can do that during your travels, from Denmark to Belgium. It'll be fine.
In Finland.
Sure.
Via Finland.
Just doing a whole tour of Europe now.
By Norway. But anyway, it's a great pleasure to have turned to this. I'm going to let these folks go. And thank you to the wonderful players as always. I really enjoy this campaign. It is a source of healing for me, as I've often said, to be able to do something like this, especially with an author and a world that I think is this important to me. And I think I speak for all of the players that this is a pretty important world to all of them too. So thank you as always to the awesome and amazing Tren, Brad, Terry, and Amal. Chat, we get some love for them, and players, thank you. I will see you in various places very soon.
Bye.
Bye for now. And that is going to do it for me, just about. I do have to go and get set up for the next D&D session, which is going to be at 4 p.m. with D&D with GOG, which is a very different kind of feel, but is still awesome, and I love it in its own way. It's its own different kind of thing, and it's super cool. And so I hope you will all have the chance to be there as a part of it. So I want to thank my amazing players today. Just a quick reminder before that happens, though, about the fact that this campaign will continue next month. And also, we're ending Strahd. That's what they're hoping they're doing, Aaron, for sure. Also, just very quickly, I want to get this in here while I'm going through my little end of stream stuff. This is for the game, Patreon Field Chat Chosen Game of the Month, which I am playing next Tuesday in this same slot. Right now, we have a tie between Kingdom Come Deliverance with 2 votes, Growlancer 2 with 2 votes, and The Last Express with 1 vote. So now is your chance to get this vote in, because at the end of the session today, in about 3 minutes or so, whatever is the top vote getter is going to be the game that I play next Tuesday. So get your votes in now, because I really would love to know which one is actually what it's going to be. So please get your votes in now. Please do the thing. Please get your votes in. I'm going to pop this up here by clicking on that next game, and you can get your vote in for Kingdom Come Deliverance, Growlancer 2, or The Last Express. So please make sure that you get that in right now. Let's see. And we've also got Hades down there also, because this was a 4-way thing. Normally I don't like that, but that was the way it worked out this time. So if you liked what you saw and heard, please make sure to follow the channel. Please check us out on our YouTube channel, which has past broadcasts of this and other streams. That's !ArvTube. !ArvCord is the Discord, where you can hang out with the Arvanauts in between streams. !ArvTweets is the Twitter, where you can follow me on social media. And I will always talk about stuff relating to gaming, streaming, writing, teaching, and family. And because it's 2020, of course, politics and things like that. And all that sort of thing. You can find my website for this at arvineleron.com. On the financial side, !Arv Shop will let you get one of those spiffy shirts that you just saw Trendane wearing, of the various characters. It has Adventures of Middle-earth stuff and also Infinity and Beyond stuff over on the shop. On the website, on the Patreon, that's !Arvtreon. That allows you to be one of those 22 elites, those people who support us at a higher level. No, they're not elites. They're just very nice people who support the channel and give support also by getting some things, inspirations for the players, and things like that. I know a lot of people have been saving inspirations. We've got Esper Genesis coming up. We have Community D&D coming up. And of course, we have the Curse of Strahd thing coming up at the end of next week. And so people are sort of saving up for that, but we will see how that all goes. So you have no Frostpunk. Yeah, I was going to say, definitely nominate it next time, Aaron. I might be able to play that at some point when we get that all in. So, yes. So the Patreon, which could get cool stuff for you and for the channel. And so please support us by doing that. Also, please support us by subscribing to the channel, as many people have done, with those awesome custom sub badges and emotes and inspirations for the players, depending on the tier that you sub at and so on. All of that is really helpful. And last but certainly not least, the publishing stuff. !Icarus for details about my Icarus graphic novel. Retail release on that is November 10th of this year. !Library for Tales and Tomes from the Forbidden Library, which is my 5e adventure and sourcebook from Alligator Alley Entertainment. Print editions coming extremely soon, I swear to God. But it's available right now in digital form on DriveThruRPG. It's a silver seller over there. !Greyshade KS is my big Greyshade Kickstarter. There's going to be a lot going on with that in February 2nd. Very excited about that Kickstarter and about the potential for it. And I'll be talking much more about it as some of these other things get cleared off the plate, so to speak. But I'm very excited about that. So you can find out that information there. And we have exclamation point BLM. You did suggest it this time, Trent. I think it just didn't win the nomination battle, but you did actually suggest it at least. But anyway, exclamation point BLM, Black Lives Matter. We've talked a lot about why this is the case. I mentioned it again at the beginning of the session, so you already know the drill with this. Go there to check out that link because it is important. Same thing with exclamation point vote now. Please make sure that you get registered to vote. Make sure that you have a plan for voting. It is 2 weeks away, folks. 2 weeks away. And the election has already been happening in a lot of places because people are voting early, which is a good idea if you can do it. Please get your votes in early. Please make a plan to vote. Don't leave it all to the last day. A lot is riding on this election, a lot. So please make sure that you're ready to go with that. So exclamation point vote now. And then the last thing I want to mention, just last time I'm going to bring this, probably not the last time, but one of the last times I want to mention this here, just because I've spoken about it quite a bit, is this Kickstarter for Athos, the In the Moment anthology, which is currently sitting at $48.69. People have definitely, pledged to it, but there's a lot more that needs to go before it can reach its goal. And so I think it's an important anthology and a good anthology. So hopefully you folks can jump on board with that. Last thing I want to do is say thank you to my wonderful people today. Thank you to Arudinel, Dragonspear, and Hillness, best mods in the business. Thank you as well to my subscribers, Arudinel, Dragonspear, Hillness, Divinorium, Arenth, Trendane, and Trishy Mats, and Uncle Elias. Thank you so much to all of you. Thank you to my wonderful viewers, Admiral KK, Amal El-Matar. I'll come back to the players in a minute. Barizzle, Commander Root, ECAG, Flytag, get affiliated now, apparently because it doesn't realize I already am. Gigafrost, Gorgar, Italy Hara, Jagtrist, Lurks, Mrs. Dunsel, Nonstop, Questionable Results, Tauntoms, U Christensen, VNK, and Virgo Praz. And last but certainly not least, I want to thank the amazing players today, Trendane, Terry, Amal, and Brad, for their wonderful play. I really enjoyed this group, and I can't wait to see where the session's going to go. Now I got to go get myself ready for another group. And so with that, I am going to declare that the winner of the Patreon Field Chat Chosen Game of the Month is Kingdom Come Deliverance. So Kingdom Come Deliverance is what I'm going to be playing next Tuesday. And we will see. I've heard a lot about this. I have watched it played a little bit. It seems like a super, realistic combat type of setting. So we'll see what happens. But Kingdom Come Deliverance coming next week. And so I will play it as duly selected for me by chat. But that's going to do it for me. I'm going to no raid today. I'm going to get ready and head on over for just about 15 minutes from now, D&D with GOG Storm King's Thunder, which is a fun session as well. Thanks to the players. Thanks to all of you. And I will catch all of you lovely people just a little bit. Oh, and the last thing is possibly we'll be back tomorrow night with Community D&D. It depends on what the players decide as to whether that's going to happen or whether it will be pushed back by a week. If we are on tomorrow, great. If not, then I'll see you back here on my channel as well on Friday night for Esper Genesis and Saturday for Final Fantasy VII Remake. That's going to do it for me. Everyone be good to each other. Much love, and I'll see you folks hopefully at GOG in about 15 minutes. Bye for now. Oh, be good to each other, and bye for now.